As density bodies exhale, expand, diamond sun crystal body inhales and contracts. So, yeah. Where am I? I can do that. I can keep track of that. I can go, okay, so you're, I'm inhaling, you're exhaling. Got that. What is that pillar doing? Right? That's the part that gets a little tricky. Okay, how long are those radon cells holding that energy? This gets into other stuff that has to do with the ethos and eros phasing in the body, in the pillar, on this level, building up spark charge. There's a part in here that they'll probably have, maybe, I think they'll give me more on, probably just to speak about, possibly tonight or possibly Saturday. But there's a connection in there that like there's one more part. Oh, it does that too. That links two things together. This gives a basic explanation, but there's something there that I keep trying to find when I'm playing with like the breathing or even trying to be aware. Okay, I inhaled. What's my crystal body doing? Where is it? Right? I can't feel it doing anything yet, and that's probably because it's not breathing yet. Because we haven't done the planet hasn't done the zendradon activation. It's starting. But we're going to be doing it in sync with the planet because we have to catch that wave when it comes through on the planetary level. And that's what we can learn tonight. And I think we can pick up some of the sub-frequencies. There's something they're up to, too. I think they're letting something run from the echo level because indigo shields are keyed to the echo grids as opposed to just, like human shields are keyed to just the earth grids here. We can get stuff a bit early, and I think that's happening because they gave us something when we had to go home to pick up paperwork, that too. There was something in the fields because after that I could see the double sets of arcs in the 4 of our fields that were there. Slowly, kind of, ow, rigor mortis, rigor mortis of the arcs. That's what it felt like. You could see that they're slow, just starting to move as if it had been a very long time since they had. But I've never seen them before. I've never seen them light up before, and I've never seen them move. It's like, oh, neat. They're big compared to, they're really, really large. And you can start to feel, there's a really strange feeling of being in a massive bubble, not just a small bubble, but like a bubble that would be like out there in the water someplace on this side, and who knows where, out that side, and way up in the sky, each one of us. So we're all like little light cells passing through each other. We can't help but brush shoulders. As we're 5 million feet wide. But it feels like that when you start to tune in to these arcs. So I know that we're supposed to do something tonight with that. They're going to give it over dinner. They're going to tell us what. But I do believe it's going to be for anybody who wants to play and be there. You're going to be able to start doing your arcs and getting them moving. So there's some kind of early activation because I do believe. I think it's the Stonehenge day, because I know that's the big day. I mean, they're even having me wear my silvers. Oh, I haven't done that in ages, my silver stuff. But that's like, it's formal. I mean, you don't all have to do formal, but I was getting the urge I need to do silvers for me. So if anybody wants to, by the way, for the grid work when we go to Stonehenge, there we can get away with it without, like, being run off the place, right? Right? They didn't tell us what clothes we had to wear, right? Right. And they're used to all sorts of wacky stuff up there anyway, right? Yeah. So anyway, when we do the work at Stonehenge, that's the day. The St. Michael's Day is important too, but it's more important to be inconspicuous there. At least from what I felt last time we were there. It's like tone down the light and be invisible if possible, kind of thing. I didn't feel it particularly welcoming to indigos. Nice place though. It's really cool looking. It's like a really neat place to see, but it has some very interesting, heavily Templared grids. And the quieter your light is, the probably better time you'll have there. But when we go to Stonehenge, they're used to all sorts of stuff. They're immune. They don't care anymore, I don't think. As long as you behave and don't mess with the stones and follow your times in and out precisely and that kind of stuff, they don't care. So that'll be the day if we're going to, if you want to do ceremony, you know, and do whites or like heliothalic pastels, that kind of stuff. That would be appropriate, but you don't have to. That's why he didn't say, bring your whites kind of thing. Because we're going to be getting reputations. We already have reputations. The group that goes around, they dress in white and do really wild stuff. Like what? I don't know. Sing, spin in circles. We don't spin anymore, only on the inside. Okay. Anyway, do I have to read any more of this? No, I finished that one. Oh, okay. Where are we on? Yes.
You did, but what's written is correct. You said inhale.
Which time?
Yeah.
Which expands?
You used the word. She did, but she was a bit tired.
And which one? Yeah.
You said inhale at that point. You said inhale, expand.
Did I? When I read it?
You just
okay.
it,
All right. That's very possible. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever's on the page is what I was attempting to read. Yeah. Okay. That's why I like it when we have it in print, especially when I'm, coming in without as much sleep as I'd like. Okay, the radionic heliopath tubes from the Loti, meiotic, diotic, vortex grid, Loti point sets, density and etheric, creating the Loti harmonics grid. So this particular configuration of Loti points, where you have a bunch of them, you have the 24 Lotum points, which are, their little shapes aren't with them. Oh, they're supposed to have the little shapes that match the little shapes here. The Lotum points, I believe, are these in here. These guys. Yeah, these guys are those. Yeah. So the little diamond-shaped squarey things on their side are the 24 Lotum points. The 24 Loti points, which link to levels of the PCM Loti, are the LE points, which are, they should be these, right? Are they marked? No, we didn't get there yet. Okay. I think they're these, yeah. Yeah, so we didn't get a chance to get all the words in. Yeah, so these are the PCM Loti points, these guys. Yeah, and then these are the Loti, the ones that connect directly into the Lota. And when it gives you this, it basically is this. You have the Merkaba happening in there. You got the crystal body structure, right? This is this plugged into the crystal body structure. You have the lotus arcs. These are the big arcs. And then you have the little density levels with their arcs. And this whole thing expands, contracts, inhales, exhales. And it's quite an anatomy. So that's to let you know about the points. So when you're working with, this will help you to know what why they're important. The Loti points that we work with, the lotus points, they're the innermost ones that would interface directly with the pillar of power on the inside, that would connect all of these, that would be like the radon lines running down in, that they would connect through the final stage of them into the pillar through those lotus points that we're working with. And the lotus points are actually spheres. They form spheres of energy, little spheres. And at one point I was getting bits of stuff where they're like actually in the skin. Some of them are like half in the skin and half out of the skin and all sorts of stuff. So that was like, they said, never mind that right now. You don't need to know that to use them. You know what I mean? Properly. So there's a whole bunch more on those at some point. But it's most important to understand what they're connected to, because that's where you start to understand why they're important. When we set a base pulse rhythm in lotus points, it's sending it back out through whatever level the radon lines are on. Now, we haven't had much of those on, but we've been able to take it back into the etheric. So the lotus points that we've been working with are the ones that are the interface between the atomic and the etheric. So you're using the atomic level to recode the etheric level that has been damaged in order to have the etheric level restructure the atomic level. So, yeah. You need to have certain frequencies. The Laettori and Laedori frequencies, you're not going to touch going through the lotus points or being able to activate them or touch the etherics without the twin flames of the ekas to be able to do it. And they are very damaged right now. It's kind of funny because some of the, let's say, Tothian, to keep it broad, teachings, we're bringing through, working with lotus points, but not calling them that. The ones in the wrists they were working with, they're trying to get you to code Metatronic stuff into them. And it's like, without telling you anything about what they are. Oh, you have this big sphere around you, and you have these little balls in here and a few other points. Yeah, they don't bother telling you what they're connected to. Of course not, because if you knew, you wouldn't put that code in there. You know? But at least you know that if you look at other metaphysical teachings, this stuff covers the stuff they're talking about, but it shows you where it fits in with other stuff. And you'll find that there are teachers out there that, you know, people that are channeling, they've left themselves open to teaching and also to misteaching. Not that they have the intention to do so, but there's all sorts of wacky things flying around out there talking to people these days. They have an agenda. They have an agenda that they take very seriously. And that agenda is to make sure those crystal bodies do their full role into Metatronville, and they're going to get as many people to help them do that as possible. So a lot of the healing modalities that are out there have really damaged a lot of people, and the people that are using them haven't meant to. They're being conned. And there's one thing I like about this program, because we don't have to take on other people. We're not trying to make anybody wrong, but we are trying to show where those other teachings fit. There is an anatomy that is a divine anatomy, and they've all been trying to tell you about pieces of it. Well, here's where all those pieces fit together, and here, whatever modality you're using, use this with it. You know what I mean? Understand the whole thing, not just little bits of parts, and use the most powerful technologies if you want to combine them with your other stuff. Because if there's any negative other stuff running, this will take care of it. You know, it will clear it. It will harmonize the frequencies back into natural ones, if possible. And if you're working on somebody that is Metatronic, and that there is no other option, their being knows that. Their biology, their crystal body knows that. It will use whatever frequencies you can give them to the best way it can. It will either completely reject them, but they wouldn't be sent to you if you were like working as a healer. They wouldn't be guided to you unless they were sent to try to hurt you. That's where you have to be careful, because sometimes clients will actually be on a secret mission that even they don't know about, that is meant to try to get at your fields. And you need to be aware of that and approach it all with a grain of salt. Love everybody and keep your fields nice and strong, and don't let, you know, literally the frequency guard down. You can trust people to be precisely what they are, whatever that might be, and it might be later that you find out. So better safe than sorry, you know, kind of thing. Anyway, there's the connection to the inner lotus points. Some more diagrams. Yeah. Then those create a horizontal and vertical lines. They were diagonals, right? Then there's this other grid, the diagonal grid lines of the Lodi harmonics grid, which was, you know, the diagonal ones we just looked at from the Lodis, interfaced through the meiotic dyadic grid lotus point sets, polarizing to form the horizontal and vertical Loti octaves grid that downsteps currents from the etheric vertical ethos meridian and eros axiotonal line grids. So here's another level of gridding. There's probably more diagrams to go with this one, but there are these lines as well. These get into, I think, when we start putting it on the planetary level, get into some of the, what do they call them? I forget. There's a funny, racial grids? Something like that. There's a... Yeah. There's racial? Yeah. Racial grids. I think that's connected to these. I don't know why, but I think that word is connected to these.
Well, the 90-degree angle is crucial in a racial.
Yeah, and these are all, 90-degree angles, yeah. There's also a set of diagrams that got put to the side because of complexity issues in time that have to do with when frequency comes in to these lines, there's this whole set of the vortices, or where frequencies from the inside and frequencies from the outside kind of crash into each other, and then they each project out a different frequency from the collision at a 90-degree shift, so you end up with the horizontal. That's how these horizontals were created, in fact, through the diagonals, with frequency incoming and outgoing through the diagonal meiotic and dyadic vortices. The frequencies interfaced with each other, and they spark, not spark phase, but they kind of crash into each other, and it bends both of them, makes each of them send a part. Part of them will still go on the way they're going, but a part of each of the currents will actually bend and polarize and create horizontal and vertical lines from their diagonal intersection points. So there's a whole other couple of diagrams that had to do with that. That was just another level of detail and complexity that wasn't essential right now. So I wasn't going to attempt to spend the next 6 days trying to figure those out. Yeah, drawing them is one thing. Labeling them is a real joy. 'Cause sometimes the drawings are clear, but there's so many different names to so many different things, and you have to understand 6 processes before you can even get to the names. It can be a challenge. And this is just a bigger picture showing what. Do we ever find out? Is it 8? They said 8. That's what I thought, because we thought it was 8. But somebody... It's 7:30? For sure? Okay. And it's a fixed one. So, yeah. Okay. What do we have there? Oh, back to this again. Yeah, that's a good way to wrap up before dinner. This one. This one, let's see. It was probably about 6 o'clock this morning when I was still trying to get the words for this one and to make sure the flows were right. What's flowing in what direction? Yeah. And we got it right. It's easier, I think, to try to read it and look at what it's trying to say, but I'll point out what this is. First of all, these are basically the phases. We're back to the axiotonal lines, which are the ones that, the magnetic Eros lines that run up. And these are the ones formed by going back to where we had the teleosphere. These are the lines that run through the teleosphere, right? So you have the axiotonals. The magnetics run from the bottom up. Then these guys, they polarize when they hit up here. Part of them come down through the center of the pillar, and I think they haven't said exactly how they move through the radon cells, but it's the radon cells that carry them down, and then they cycle back up where you get another set of 12 moving from the bottom to the top, an inner set of axiotonal lines. Right now, those inner ones in the staff would also be the same thing as the outer ones. They'd be the same positions as the outer ones, and they would run the same frequency. They would be the axiotonals would be the 11 2/3 counterclockwise Eros, and so would the inner ones be. Now, there's other things that happen. Part of the currents, when they arc up to the poles, the magnetics arc up to the poles, split and go down that way, but part of them split. See, these guys are splitters. I'm noticing this, of what these radon cells, this is the zendradon up here at, this one runs between 12.5 and 11.5, okay, the zendradon photocell. Now, it controls that, it's part of the control mechanism. Remember, there's a body that runs from 12.5 around to 0.5, that's the logosphere, right? And then there's another body that runs from 11.5 to 1.5. That's the photosphere. So these things actually interface between the two levels of the spheres. And when it polarizes the energy, that it sends the one down the current so it can come back up. And it seems very consistent so far that the magnetics do flow up wherever you put them. I don't think I see any magnetics flowing down, and I think I went crazy doing, you'll see the diagrams that come after this, that I was really ready to throw out the window. That magnetics go from bottom up and electricals go from top down, just like the Merkabas do. And that seems to be pretty consistent all the way through. So after that split, where you get the inner axiotonal lines, 12 axiotonal lines forming, at the same time that split occurs, the other part of the split does this, and it carries the lines down at this angle. Now remember, this is inside of the crystal body structure. And which one would this be in? I don't think they put those two together yet. These are magnetic lines. I don't know if these run with... I'm not sure which one these run with. I had to find out. They didn't take it that far yet. They haven't told me which, I don't think. Have you seen that in any writing? I haven't seen that either. Which one runs through which grid? Well, they're all in the same place, so it doesn't really matter when you think about it. But I'm sure one of them is keyed to one of the crystals, and I'm not sure if it's the same polarity one or the opposite polarity one. I would believe it would draw energy. The crystal bodies would draw energy off the opposite polarity one. But the one that's the same polarity may be of it. It may belong to that one. So I have to see how they explain that part. They haven't given that yet. But we do have, within the axiotonal grid, we have what becomes the natus lines. And they're formed by the negative axiotonal lines, but they are positive, and they flow from the top down. Okay, I didn't get into the little white arrows and all that stuff just to keep it a little more calm, because it can get where you really like, what am I looking at? Including me when I'm trying to draw it. Now, this isn't just a shape here, a simple shape. It's the 12 lines coming down. All right, so that's forming the nadial capsule with the 12 lines. This is spinning. The nadids are clockwise. The thing spins clockwise inside the counterclockwise axiotonal sphere. And remember, the axiotonal sphere created the magnos, which spins clockwise, right? Its deflection field creates one on the inside and the outside. If you think of a sphere moving through a medium, an invisible medium, it stirs up that medium and creates a backflow both inside and outside if it's a hollow sphere. So you have an inside and outside magnos current flowing here. Now this one, with the nadis lines, is spinning clockwise, and it's creating a counterclockwise deflection field around it. But this one's akasha-shaped because of the way it's pulled up through the, I get a feeling this might go with the electricals, but I'm not sure. But, the electrical capsule, crystal body. But it generates the opposite. Again, it's its own deflection field current both inside of itself and outside. And the positive nadis lines, which run 11 2/3 positive clockwise magnos, which is the current that had been generated, the deflection field from here. So the next set of lines down actually uses this current, these fields, to create this current to form these lines. But it generates its own negative current. So this becomes the eros. Again, it's turned back into eros because this was eros. It got reversed in spin and polarity, and it became magnos. And then the magnos was used, and it created a deflection field that became eros. So it came back again to 11 2/3 counterclockwise negative. That is the silver sanctum, the eros flame body silver sanctum that we've talked about. Now each density level has one. And they go all the way up. Each teliosphere implies one, and there's one on the dimensional level, on the density levels, and on the larger crystal body levels. And after that is formed, then the next step is the frequencies come in through the nadradon down here, which runs from 0.5 to 1.5, again in between the logosphere and the photosphere, because it links those two just like the zendradon on the top did. And the currents blend into one temporarily. Actually, they blend into one. One goes this way, counterclockwise. Okay. It's an eros current. The eros current comes in. The eros was generated by the radis lines, or nadis lines, right? As the deflection field. So the negative eros current comes in counterclockwise, stays counterclockwise, does the yun flow. And when it's coming up here, it also splits. So again, we're having the radon cells serving as splitters as well. They're like, I don't know what you call that in official electrical terms or electronic terms, but it's splitting the currents. They seem to blend and split, and blend and split and mix, I think. So you end up with the yun flow and this opposite spin. So the units of eros come in here. Part of them go this way, the negative ones stay that way, but part of them backspin after the first pass, because when this comes up here, this way, you have a negative hitting a negative, so it kicks part of the other one back into a reverse spin. And this creates this area here. And this area here is what? That is called the density level Ka. Now we have Ka, Tha, Ra, all sorts of things up there in the echo when we get into the matrodon seed atom in the seed cell in the echo. But this is the level in the coming down in the density vector levels where it forms a Ka cell, which is a light cell, specific type of frequency, Ka. All right? It is actually, Ka is actually ethos based. So when you reverse the eros current, you get the Ka cell, which is a base ethos cell. Etheric. They're still etheric currents. That gives you this shape. So you've got a flame body, and you've got what's part of your electromagnetic fields. Because if you think about the funny apple-shaped thing that they show you in science books that's around the planet, that they call the magnetic fields. Actually, the magnetic fields are all sorts of blotchy, scribbly things all over the place and running through the grids. But there's a basic form to them, that, like from around in the atmosphere, that form what we call the poison apple right now, which is that thing that's holding, it's actually keyed into the gravitron vortices that we've talked about. And it goes this way, right? If you're going to look at it upright, it would be this way, then it has flow lines that way, and then flow lines that way, almost like a spidery thing with big bulges on the side. What it's supposed to look like, the natural magnetic fields have room for the rod. They're the yin-yun flow. You have the yun, which is the female magnetic, coming up from the bottom counterclockwise, and then back down again. You have the yan, which is the electrical male. It comes in clockwise. I'm losing my lines here. Stays clockwise, and then comes back out. And that does a kickback when it hits itself, and it creates a negative Eros current here. So through the yan-yun flows that are within the radius lines, that are within the flame capsules, because you have the electrical one that forms here in the same way, but it forms upside down. It starts with the zendradon cell, and then it moves up toward the zendradon cell. So you end up with these two flame bodies, one upside down, one what looks like right side up to us. You end up with these two electromagnetic flows in through here, and those electromagnetic flows created the Ka and the Tha cells. That would be this one and this one. Now, they start to phase, which we'll get into after dinner. Oh boy. When they phase vertically. All right? This is where pillar of power comes from, where the Ka and the Tha start to pull together in the middle and then come back out again, expand and contract, breathe. And when they breathe, they form, I believe, this is the Ra. This would be this one in the center, the Ra. The Ra is a density level recreation of the Ra up in the echo level, which is basically the atomic current, all right, the atomic current, their atomic current. That's the beginning of the formation of our atomic currents. And it also creates these other two cells, and we have there, these are the photoflame cells, the larger photoflame cells. We have the Ra, and the one you don't see here, there's actually one behind this that's created in the same place. This is called the Sha, where the Ra would be the male electrical version, La Ettore version. The Sha would be the etheric La Adore version. So the Ra currents become the atomic currents, and the Sha currents become the etheric body. You know, the currents that are used by for the etheric body. Now, what do we have here? I just did this diagram. Oh, yeah. Now, the phasing of these guys creates, as well, these guys. Another ethos and another eros. Except, this eros is actually created by the other side. It's created by the Lotai, and the Particle universe, Lotai. Ours, our Ra cell, phases with the Ka and the Tha, and it creates our ethos, PCM ethos, this way, but it projects at the 90-degree angle. It's eros. So that ends up, actually, embedded in the grids of the parallel. Just like theirs ends up embedded in our grid. And it's the phasing of these, the ethos and the eros, that generates phasing with the Ka and the Tha that continually refuels the Ra. These are photoflame cells that we're literally made of. Like they're massive cells that we're walking around inside of, cells of light that are naturally meant to phase. And when your arcs are glued back at a 60-degree angle, they don't phase. The pillar is stopped where it can't phase and come up and down. What we're working on now is there's been a twisted, the mutation has twisted currents. So you get this vesica, where these two form a vesica Pisces across here, and it's a completely unnatural and reversed polarity flow of currents. And what it does is completely reverse the nature of currents running through the chakras and the formation of matter. So we're carrying, our planet is carrying, and our bodies are carrying severe reversals of polarities all over the place. It's not just dyslexia. This is why it's so hard to pull this information on what are the polarities, because as soon as you try to bring it through, it flips. It wants to flip the other way, so you have to fight it and say, no, I'm going to look at both of you, and I'm not going to give you either of you. I'm not going to settle on either of you until I know it's one or the other. And that's what I've had to do with these diagrams. They're really difficult to translate. So they took a while, fighting back and forth. No, it's right. No, it's there. I'm going to put that away until I get some more information on that one, that kind of thing. So anyway, this is the beginning of understanding the phasing. And the phasing is what's most important, because the phasing is breathing your light cells back together again in order to generate spark currents within your pillar of power. And then when you combine that with opening the larger arc so you can open the breathing tube to get the radon heliopathic lines back online to begin to be able to bring in the pulsar plasma waves from the lote and activate your diamond sun crystal bodies. So that's what we're going to get into after dinner. Have a good dinner. I'm only 6 minutes over. That's not too bad. They couldn't do it for so many people. Yeah, on short notice. This one's a bit messy. It was one of the last ones, but at least we got the basic forms on the paper. Yeah. Will you let me know when they come in?
Yeah.
I'll take a 5 minute when they come in. Just daughter missing in action. Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Okay. What was the one right before this? I like to usually start with the one right before. We didn't do that one yet. We did. Thank you. We left off. I always like to start where we left off, for the sake of visual continuity. Is that backwards? Yes, it is. There we go. Okay. There we go. When we left off, we'd made it through a crystal body structure in a much more comprehensive way than we have ever really done before, because we got a lot of the linking information. I hope that's been helpful to you for the people who've had K2-3 before. I found this like, thank you, now it makes sense to me. You know what I mean? Because I knew it made sense before, and I could see glimpses of this stuff, but I had no idea where pieces fit or any of that. But at least we got technique, and I knew the stuff was good. Just there's a lot of stuff that needed to be filled in. I think the new charts with the go in between the old ones have helped, and it's a good thing because it gets more interesting. There's more anatomy, and I do want to get us to the point where tonight before we leave, we do get through whatever stack of graphs there that involve the matrodon and a number of other things that get us finally to the Ruchete spiral, so we know what this is and what it looks like. One of the probably most challenging parts that we're going to talk about is it's not really hard when you get the gist of the phasing concept as far as the ethos body and the eros body phasing through the density body and actually resparking it into life. But there are, when it gets into the 6 cycles of like how many breaths? All right, 6 breaths and it phases this way. And then it starts to do other things. When it hits that 7th cycle of acceleration, the RO cycles, and then into the regular like Ruche pillar reset, this gets interesting. Right now, we're just going to kind of look at it in terms of 6 cycles in general. But there's all sorts of cycles, and we don't have the information on that yet fully. We've been given the basic calendar, the Eonic calendar in Ireland workshop. But plugging all of this in and how to synchronize your own breathing with planetary time waves, that I think is probably going to come out in probably in the next level, because we've gotten little bits of it, but not enough to even string it together where I wouldn't do more than confuse you probably. So when we get into the phasing aspect of the eros and the ethos bodies, so we can start to understand how the pillar of power works and that kind of thing, it'll also lead us to the point where we can get at least a clue as to what starburst is about and how it differs from the average thing that takes place in the natural breathing cycles of a planet. Because the breathing cycles are very natural. When the crystal body is functioning normally, you don't need starburst. The planetary grids don't do starburst, but it's something the planet does to get itself out of harm's way, basically, when certain things are triggered in the grids, just like Hetharo and Hethalon are. When you go into the He-Tharos and Hethalons, they're bigger than the little, the electrical and magnetic breaths that they tend to go through in the 6 cycles on normal breathing. Everything that breathes goes through, right now, 6 cycles and never makes it through the 7th, but when we get into the larger cycles where you get axis shifts of the radial body into the 45-degree axis, so larger flames can anchor again to recharge the seed atoms and things. We just went through a period like that. We just got through a universal level, Hitharo and Hethalon cycle, and are now in the Rushite reset cycle, which under normal circumstances is quite a celebration. It's a good thing. It's a time leap as far as the time waves on the planetary grids. They accelerate and it goes back to start, goes back to 0 point. And the Mayans are right in that sense. It is the end of time. They didn't say it was the end of the world. They said it was the end of time and the start of the new one, right? Which it is. But when things happen to the grids, particularly once that alignment has occurred, the planetary grids are quite vulnerable. And the gates are open in the Eka. And those frequencies of the pillars are coming in. Once they start, you can't stop them. The Yanni can't stop them, and nothing else can either. It's part of the natural living, life cycle is a good word. The life cycle of the crystal body on a planetary level or a universal level. But if a misalignment worse than what was there to begin with occurs once the pillars start activating, that can cause real problems. And that's why the starburst effect has been triggered. So by the time we get through a bit more of this anatomy into where we can look at the pillar of power in relation to ourselves, it's happening the same way in the planet. We can start to understand what the planet is going through and what we're preparing our systems to go through. Because it seems to be quite profound. I don't get that it's negative as far as scary or anything like that, though it possibly could be, and just in case, if you're prepared, it doesn't have to be scary. But the kick-up of hurricanes and things like that is connected. They have said all of this, the wacky weather, including the rumblings of Mount St. Helens and some of the stuff that's happening up in Alaska, are all directly connected to what the UIR groups are doing with the Buddhara and linking the wormholes. And they're not planning to stop anytime soon. I'm wondering when it's going to affect New York City, because they have the FIX network up there. And I would imagine if they're putting the FIX wormholes down south online, the next bit would be go up there and then probably run the Michael Mary line. That's probably why we're running it first. Right? Or at least simultaneously, it appears. Wonder if we'll have any company at Stonehenge. So we have it's supposed to be private groups, because you can only go in like 20 some at a time, so we have to take people into 3 different groups, because they really control the site now. So we should be, it's a private group, so there shouldn't be anybody else there. You never know, though. Probably a black helicopters overhead or something. Yeah. But anyway, when it comes back to our bodily structures, this was one of the harder diagrams to pull, not because the drawings were that difficult, but because getting the flows of everything right and the spins and all of that was a bit challenging. The information's there. There'll be more information added to these eventually. There's even more linking, linking text and linking diagrams, but there just wasn't time to put any more, in between, or we never would have got here today. This is enough where you can understand, what your axiotonal lines are and how they create their, the negative axiotonals. Eros lines create the natus lines, the positive charge natus lines, and how the deflection field from the natus lines creates your Eros, your Eros capsule of your silver sanctum in your flame body. And what's neat is we do have the ethos capsule as well, and that's called the golden gateway. And when you put the two together, you get this very interesting shape. It's 2 akashas put together, and it has the Tha and the Ka, creating the Ra in the center, and the phasing of them with the Ra creates the ethos and the Eros, our Eros over here, and the parallel, it's the same thing is happening on the parallel side. So we end up at the same time as we project out our Eros over this way, they project theirs out, and it ends up here. They phase, the parallel side phases with our Eros, and we phase with theirs. So the natural breathing process actually involves the process of these cells, these are photolight cells, coming together and then expanding out again. That would be the natural process. It would be happening normally and naturally if it weren't for the mutation. To get this to be able to happen again requires a few things. One of the things, we started in Belize, and once it starts in the planetary grids, we can start it in our bodies. Even with the indigos, we had to wait until it was releasing in the planetary grids, very possibly because it would damage the planetary grids if we tried to run it, even though our shields could do it. If we tried to run it, it would anchor it on the planet before the planet was ready to do it, and that could harm planetary shields more than they're already harmed. So I get the feeling that that's what they're doing today. Like they're going to teach us right before we go the beginnings of getting the double arc sets moving. but they didn't give me any written technique. I thought he was going to give me written now, but it's not going to be now. It's going to be for Saturday. We can't use it yet, basically, but we can practice. So they're going to run us through some version of something that they want us to practice, and we can use it tomorrow. It'll begin, I think, a subharmonic activation, but we are waiting for the planetary grids. And they haven't said it's tomorrow, but it's possible. I have to find out. They'll let me know, tonight, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's the day we're at Stonehenge, which is possible, more possible probably. But, I don't know. There's something activating in the grids tonight, and it's not the zendradon. Let me see. I just want to check with something, because I keep getting heat rushes, and they seem to be coming off the ground level, which is a strange effect that I've not felt before. You getting any of that? It's almost like heat waves coming off the ground, not up through your own body, where it's like, oh, yeah, DNA again. But it reminds me of something that you were saying. Yeah. I'm getting it as not seeing it, but I'm feeling rolling waves of heat. Sue is seeing smoke on the ground, which is interesting. I wonder. And I'm getting some strange effects here, like that side of my head just went numb. I'm going to take my jacket off, excuse me. Here we go again. Whatever this is. Yeah, there's something up in the grids tonight, and I'm not sure whose it is. It's not harming us. It doesn't feel beneficial, no. It doesn't. Saturday morning? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I had a feeling that they were feeling something out to see how far something would go, and it went in a direction where certain stuff went on security release until closer to time. Yeah. In other words, I think we have company. Yeah. But I don't think it's one of those we have to say, okay, everybody, run! No. Only once that happened. On the Bermuda trip, they said, get out of the room. You remember that? That was the strangest. Sorry, guys, we gotta leave. Scatter. Literally. Not in large groups. Scatter. We don't have to do that now. But I don't think so anyway. No. I'm saying, no, but hold the shield stable. Yeah. Something's going down. I'm getting prickles all the way up and down my arms. My hairs are standing on end. All right, just give me a second. I want to tune in here for a minute, see what I can, if they'll give me anything. Well, I know who it is. That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, they're going to be very careful on what they release at this point. I can speak about what's down, which we have lots to go through anyway, so that'll be fine. But as far as any release stuff, it's definitely a good time to put your thought screens up, and things. I was wondering when they'd get around to being pissed off about the tour. I saw the funniest thing, actually, when we were at the tour. And we were really trying to be nice. I mean, we're there as representatives council, and we're aware of the host thing, which really ticks them off even more, actually. They don't want theirs to host out, so that's probably why they're really not happy with us. But it was the strangest thing. There was like this really strange cloud that appeared in the astral level, and it was like a band of bratty angels, like troublemaking angels that were like tumbling over each other, like, kind of like when they're bored, they just fight with each other for the heck of it, for fun. And they went, oh no, right? Like they knew we were there, but they thought their guys could handle it, and they weren't, and they didn't. And whatever we did seemed to upset what they were trying to do, which wasn't healthy for the planet, and we didn't stop them. But there's something that really upset them, and this like band of them went streaking out, and I could actually see them. Uh-oh, yeah, they're going for reinforcement. And they came back in like a wave, like a fleet. And I didn't see anything of them after that. They didn't try any direct anything with us, but I have a feeling they're up to it. Did they? Okay. Okay. Yeah, a couple people have said they've had a little bit, like on the way back in the bus or something. Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't feel that you were in any danger. You guys' fields are so strong, there's not a lot they're going to be able to do unless you're sitting there thinking, oh, they're going to get me, they're going to get me, they're going to get me, because that's saying, come on in, come and get me. You're inviting them when you do that. If you realize that the power of the Christus frequencies that you're working with, you don't have to be afraid of this stuff. You can actually be amused by it, but not in a rude way. I mean, it doesn't help to antagonize those who are already antagonized on your behalf. It just upsets them more, and they tend to try to throw larger rocks. And even in the astral, that can not feel good sometimes. They're doing something, though. Okay. Right. I wonder what they were planning. Because we weren't trying to stop them from anything. If we were going to interfere with their spiritual right to be obnoxious, we would have done it a long time ago. Right. Yeah. Anyway. It's true. And have a long arm. This is true. Okay. Yeah, as I was just saying, for people that might not be able to hear me, I was just saying about the serpent grid and how when you grab a serpent by the tail, that's the way. If you're going to pick it up, you do it. And he said we kind of, when we were at the tour, we just kind of did that. They have a serpent grid that runs all the way through the Yucatan and all the way over here and that. And that's your specialty. If we're going to talk about that, you're going to talk about that. We'll be swinging the snake? I don't think snakes like to be swung. Cats don't either.
Especially when you let them go with a lot of velocity behind it.
Oh dear. They might take that as an act of aggression.
No, it's just a relocation package.
Relocation. Yeah. Anyway, we can do the stuff that's already down on paper, or Mylar. So we will get back to that, and just don't mind me if we end up interrupting, because we've got our guys, we've got council here with us hanging out. They're monitoring something in the grids. They're doing something. They're doing something with the grids under the room, and I don't know what it is. A good time to run your flame, phase your lotuses a little bit. What? That's a good idea. Yeah, plus the Rishi song. I'm getting that we should do the Rishi song, too. I need the words to that. I haven't sang that in a year and a half. I usually use the other ones. I'll follow you. You can lead that one. I'll follow Rosalind, because she sings it best. That would be really helpful, because it has been like a year since I've had time to... I never learned the melody to that, actually. And I like that one. Yeah, they're up to something here. This is why I feel worried about Lex, too. I don't want her out of our fields, and they have her over the hotel all by herself. She went for a walk without permission. Speaking of which, we haven't heard from them yet, have we?
Oh, they're on the way back. Matt's going to give me an answer.
Okay. Isn't that taking an awful long time?
Well, let's do this then. We'll have them along.
Yes, I think so. I don't know the melody to this one. You know, good. You teach me this one. We got the words through, but I didn't do the melody, and I never learned it. Here.
Oh, no, I'm not doing it.
Oh, chicken.
Rose can
Where's Rose? Rose, where are you? There she is. How about... Oh. Yes, please. How about you both? I don't care. Somebody.
Good family.
You know, that's my Maharata song. I do that one all the time. Especially the sun shower.
1, 2, 3. Maharata Kumbai Vectus Mushanatu Enable Uniglium by Vectai Maha by Vectai Udore Ornamur Iste unte Satrasha Hehera Katate Uma Ashelum Taesha Intadoe Shaddai Akumtan Akumtan Shaddai Akumtan Akumtan Shaddai Akumtan. One more time. Maharata Kumbai Vectus Mushanatu Inevokai Uniglium by Vectai Maha by Vectai Unore Ornamur Iste unte Satrashta Hehera Hatate Uma Ashelum Taesha Intadoe Shaddai Ure Akumtan Akumtan Shaddai Ure Akumtan Akumtan One more time. 3 times. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Maharata Kumbai Vectus Mushanatu. Inevo Kayunigli Umbai Vectai. Maharai Vectai Unore Ornamor. Iste unte isa trashta hehera. Hatate uma ashelom taisha inta dohe. Shadayore akumta akumtan. Shadayore akumtan akumtan. Shadayore akumtan. Shura arun trivectus deomir. Shalom Taiua Oromata Denita Arshueta Tekia. Oromata Isa Ishue.
Basically what we've got are, we just had a flyby of about 6 or 7 stripes of nasty, dirty-looking angels. They have angel-type wings, but they're not angels, and they don't wear robes. In fact, they seem rather naked, but and dirty. They're just like dirty-looking. It's like charcoal-colored tracks that opened up in the ceiling, and what we did was set a trampoline, basically. Anything they dropped bounced back instead of, if they're trying to do any nasty drops or anything. But it was actually quite brazen because they came into the frequencies where they knew we'd easily pick up on them, which means they're saying, you pissed us off. We're going to hassle you. Grin, right? And they're a bit serious about it. We had help. Council came in on that one. Yo, heads up. Right? And it's all right. But just be aware that we've got a bit of poltergeist activity tonight, all right, hanging around, and don't let it bug you. The last thing, when things like this happen, and it's almost part of the training, so it's like you can look at them as petty tyrants. If you're going to be a real grid worker, you can't be afraid of what is in grids, basically, all right? Not all grids are nice grids, and not all beings are nice beings, even though we all came from the same place originally, right? Now, when you have incoming like that, first, you need to trust yourself, and if you're picking up something, realize, well, it could be my imagination, or it could be just I'm letting myself get a little too nervous, or it could be something there. Put it in file 13, as I call it, until I get more information, but just in case it is something, make sure you amplify your fields. The worst thing you can do is be afraid. Fear is a choice. This is something a lot of people really need to get a mental grip on. You guys are doing good, but there are some people who freak themselves right out by the thoughts they let themselves entertain. Oh my God, the Archangel Michael crew's coming after me. Whoopee-doo. They can reach D11.5, impress me. You know what I mean? I mean, nothing against them, but they're not the only ones that can throw attitude. The biggest thing with the groups that try to harass you is they're dependent on you being harassable. If you're not harassable, just get off. Go do it to somebody else. Don't waste your energy on me. Have a nice day. And just, put up the Teflon. If you have a Teflon shield, And you can do this. You can actually experiment. You can try silver, gold, Teflon. There's all sorts of neat things you can do. But stuff slides off is really useful. There's also, if they really tick you off and they've really been like flies buzzing around your head and trying to really shake your fields, right? You say, all right, I've been nice, but I'm going to give you a last warning here. And realize you have the power to do this. You're not going to hurt anybody, but you're not going to let them hurt you either. You have the power to not be hurt, for goodness sakes. And you simply say, did you ever hear of the boomerang technique? Boomerang technique's very easy. You put up a rubber field. You think rubber. You think very bouncy, bouncy rubber. And you imagine yourself in a lovely capsule of it. And anything they throw at you, and you can choose the velocity at which your rubber's going to bounce. If they've just mildly annoyed you, go ahead, let them throw some more and just let it go. Did you catch that one? Get the hint? If, like, the Michael crew, by the way, will be one of the most, let's say, nastiest as far as they don't shake easily either, which is fine with me. And let it be fine with you. They're not going, they're ticked off because we run stronger frequency than they do. We didn't even interfere with their grid ceremony, for goodness sakes. We just joined in. We didn't stop them from doing what they were doing, but it still annoyed them. And if they want to play, hassle us now, you can try, maybe a 90 velocity of rubber bounce on your flame body. And if that doesn't work, try a 360. There's a little thing we've been using lately that really helps when you're doing exercise. I know that. And it's bringing in the frequencies of what's called the Adandra 360, which will show you. There's a graph that gets into that a bit in a minute. And it's a level of the flames that goes up past the Laetore and the Laedore and the Adandrea flame. It goes up a bit higher than that, a couple of layers higher than that, actually. And this is where we get into it's through these flames that the Matrodon and the Petrodon form. And we'll show you the chart on that in a little bit. But you can simply say, I am the Adandra 360 now. And bring your arcs up, right? And so where they're in line with the vertical column. And at the same time, you're breathing your pillar up, your ethos pillar, because they can go up now because of what was released in the grids in Belize. So we can bring the pillars up. And bring the arcs up and the pillars up and just, I am Adandra 360 now. And you're pulling in a part of your own anatomy because you have a part of your anatomy up in the Akasha levels and a bit higher as well that are that flame level, where you're made of that level of flame frequency. And just, and bring it in. And you do it 3 times and usually it'll give you a bit of chill. Like you're going to, like not cold chill, but like, ooh, felt that a bit. It's something that they taught us how to use with physical limitations, like when, because they have me on this workout program, right? Oh, God. There's something called flame runners that they're starting training for. And, I mean, we have holders and keepers and all sorts of things, but the runners have something to do with physically running. And, it's a physical training thing, and they've been putting me through it, as is already in shape. But I wasn't. I've been a slow foot soldier for a long time, and I've not been into running or anything like that. But they've been having me work out, 6 days out and 1 day off, 45 minutes of cardio without, like a block of it, where 45 minutes sustained cardio a day. And that's, of course, plus the arms, the abs, and the rest of the stuff that has to be done. It's like, I might as well just live in a gym. But I managed to get through a couple weeks of the 6 days on, but not 1 day off. I tend to get 3 days off. The worst one was 5 days off because I have to recuperate. But they would have me use that affirmation, I am the Adandra 360, at certain points. First they started with it just all the way through, and it actually made it so I could do 45, and it got easy, which was, for me, was an accomplishment with, between the asthma and the smoking and the fact that I don't like cardiovascular activity much. It's not much fun in my world. I never liked it much. It really, it did a lot. You know how you get a side stitch if you're not used to that kind of thing? Well, it cleared that, and I've never, even when we were younger with this body, we were never able to clear the side stitch. Once it happened, it was time to stop. It was time to slow down, and whatever I was doing, I wasn't going to be able to do anymore. Using that affirmation and holding the breath when you do, and bringing everything up into the pillar, and then expanding it back out. Even once was enough to clear the side stitch, and I was amazed because I could keep going. And I actually made it through, a couple of weeks of literally 6 days on. That was amazing. And I have to go back to that when we get back because it just went all to heck in the last couple of days. But anyway, if you feel that anything's around or bugging you, first note, use it as a learning experience, and note how you react to it first. Is there a part of you going, and say, put yourself in your mentor space and say to that self, okay, what did I just do? Check this out. Now, I'm not in danger, but this part of me thinks I am. Have a talk with that part of yourself and say, it's okay now. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You need to be the grown-up now. This is what part of what they were referring to when they know that we're masters here, even though we don't know, even though we forgot, even though we're just waking up to remember that. And we still want to feel safe, and we go through all those things that people who are masters don't worry about. Because if you know you're a master, you walk through whatever you need to walk through, and you know you're okay. Particularly if you know you're running Christos. There's nothing stronger in the universe. If you know your intentions are good, and you're carrying with you the honest desire to serve the Christos, to assist other people in their evolution, other beings in their evolution, to be loving and non-judgmental, but still aware and practical. Those kind of things. If you hold the right intention, you're not going to draw to yourself nasty stuff. You might have a few nasty angels that are a little ticked off that they can't play with you anymore. All you have to do is be assertive. Not aggressive, not angry and not violent. Assertive. And once in a while, I hate to say it, if they whack, whack back. Don't be afraid that if something is throwing energy balls at you and you catch it in the astral, like you realize something's there and it's like whipping energy at you or something. And just sit and still look forward. But imagine turning your astral head and going, can I help you? Because if you do that again, I'm going to throw them back at you. Do you want to play that game? The thing is, most of the ones that will try to hassle you depend on the fact that you don't know yet that you could flatten them. And as soon as you start to show them that you know the power you're holding, they'll think twice before they try to mess with you. They'll, just like bullies, they'll go try to play with somebody that's easier to get to. You know? And you do have the power. Anything that the creepos can do on the astral to cause you harassment or to implant you to harm you, you're fully capable of doing the whole spectrum yourself. Of course, you're nicer than that. You're not going to go doing stuff like that to people. But you have every right to protect your own fields. And in fact, you have a responsibility to do it. Because if you don't protect them and something gets into your fields and something decides to take your body and walk around and do something nasty with it, you're still partially responsible because you didn't hold your body, because you didn't hold your power. You know, now you're not going to be judged and sent to hell because something like that happened. But you have the power right here. The power is in your crystal body. This is yours. You each have one. It's been sleeping for a long time, but it's time to wake them up. I tell you, when they see those rolling in on the astral, it tends to be like everybody steers clear and goes, oh dear. And if they're good guys, they go, whoa, check that out. I want one. Right? You got one. I do. Yes, just turn it on. Ow. So we're entering an interesting game now, where you're going to see more of what's happening in the higher councils and even on the astral level starting to show itself in 3D dramas, just like we had that interesting host pickup over there on, at the tour. Because that's really what that was. There was a deal that went down between our guys. Okay, you take the cap off, and we'll be glad to help you over to the Adani. No, we won't tell your guys until after you're gone. Right? And that's basically what happened. That's part of the reason why these guys aren't too happy, is because we're assisting the Adani host. And that is upsetting them, because that's taking grids away from them that they want to control. It's not their business to control grids that are under somebody else's guardianship. Those grids were never under their guardianship. What we're doing is literally holding the grids on behalf of the Christos, not on behalf of ourselves. They don't belong to us. You can't lay claim to the divine as an old American Indian teaching, as well as others. And this is very true. You can enjoy and share this planet with itself, but you can't own it. And those people who are doing compromising things to the grids, either because they don't know any better or because they think they can, and that's good enough for some of them. Why? Because I can. That's not a very good reason. There's a lot of things you can do that if you're wise, you think twice about doing. But we have a right to do what we're doing. We're not stepping on their toes unless they happen to be grounding their heels into sacred spots. And then we will come and say, excuse me, we can stand there too. We don't need your permission. And if we run healing energies into the grids, and the grids bounce them after that, isn't it a shame? The earth made a choice, didn't it? We gave it the choice by running the frequencies where it was being over. It's like somebody strangling you and then somebody else coming by and peeling their fingers away and saying, well, you can stay there, get strangled if you like to, or you can run if you want to. Pick one. And the person goes, bye, I'm out of here, right? Well, something like that just happened at the tour, from what I'm getting. The grids bounced them. There was some kind of, whatever they tried to do, they tried to take something, some kind of spiral they have there deeper, and the planet said no. This is why they're not happy. Now, we'll hear more on this. Yeah, this is what this is about. Oh, it's going to be a busy night in council tonight, I can tell. Uh-oh, council meeting. Okay, anyway, back to program. So are we. I know. I know. That's interesting. Adandra 360. I heard that name. Okay. Anyway, back to our anatomy. This gets interesting. There's a diagram. I don't think it's the next one. It might be soon. Yeah, it is this one. This gets into the raw stuff, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. I think I want to look at this a little bit more about what they said about this. Yeah, because I think I need to clarify how this stuff works a bit. So when we get into here, this actually, there's an important sequence in here. And between the top one where we saw the axiotonal grid in this place, which was the magnetics running that way, and how that generated the positive electrical natus lines, and how they generate the Eros negative Eros capsule, flame capsule, and how that generates the Yun flow, which is the opposite of this one. That's the Yan. And we can bring it down a little bit so I might as well point to it since it's there. Right? These things are the beginning of the flame cells, not just the smaller ones that are the anchoring cells, but the living light flame cells coming to life in the cells that phase between the etherics and the atomics in order to generate and create and perpetually recreate the natural matter body systems and to continually spark in the pillar. The ones that we'll be using when we do pillar breathing and arc breathing and a few other things that they're going to teach us how to do. Their templates are actually set before, which I'm going to go into when I talk about the stuff up in the Eka base shield level, which is the matradon. But the same effect happens down here because the flame cells take on the same configuration that the matradon cell has, and there's a specific arrangement of how the flame cells arrange themselves and interact with each other. Once we get the magnetic flame body, the Eros flame body, and it creates this little current here that becomes the Ka. So that the negative creates a positive, creates a negative, creates a positive. Right? So we have the positive Ka force here, and Ka is a specific set of etheric frequencies. I think they're etheric atmic, actually. I'd have to look it up. There's one of those, again, where we have like 20 different names of different flame cells, and some are etheric atomic, some are etheric atmic, some are atmic, some are... No, etheric atmic and atmic etheric are not the same thing. The one in front means it's the dominant one, right? So there's a lot of what current was which, that kind of stuff. We're just getting this stuff in. So this, we don't have the list. We don't have them all sorted out yet. But the Ka and the Ka and the Tha create the current that's called the Ra, which is the density atomic current down here. But there's also a Ka and Tha and Ra and Sha on the level of the Eka as well. I know that we were being given stuff, with the matradon on that. So it's like what we're seeing down here in the density, the Veka density bodies, is a smaller version of what takes place up in the Eka-Loda as far as the original, the original creation imprint of the matradon. So the formation of the two flame capsules, where you have the Eros capsule, and this is going to be fun to work with. I have a feeling we're going to be working with this one directly, this golden gateway that is the Eros capsule that forms from, you have your, ethos capsule. You have your ethos meridian lines here. They do their phasing thing, and they create the natus radius lines that are actually negative and spin counterclockwise, and that creates a deflection field that is positive, that creates the positive ethos flame body, and this creates the negative Eros cell. So we've got two cells just from these two sets of flows that open. We've got the two flame cells, and when you put them together, they begin a phasing process that they come together and they form the Ra frequencies and the Sha, which you don't see, but the Sha becomes the base for the etherics, for the etheric templates here, the etheric blueprints here, and the Ra becomes the base for the atomics. The Tha is kind of like the mother of Eros kind of thing. It's a larger, stronger sound current than the Eros, but it's again a negative magnetic current, the female, and the Ka is the male, the electrical. So these flame cells start to phase here, where they come together in the center, generate the Ra spark, and then they actually pull out into the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's actually a sixth one, the Sha, that is the etheric main current behind here. So through this, you end up with your ethos and your Eros bodies. You end up with your Ka and your Tha flame force, and you end up with your Ra, which is your manifest form system. All right. When we get into some of the other stuff, we're also going to look at these flows a little bit more. The Yan and the Yun. The Yan is the male flow, again, that comes in clockwise from the top, stays clockwise. Notice it makes that shape, but it stays moving clockwise in relation to itself. Right? Just like the Yun stays moving counterclockwise. These create they're the atomic, etheric atomic, etheric, one of those, etheric atomic interface, I believe is how it's worded, where it's through the Yan-Yun flow. This plugs directly into the inner 24 lotus points that we've been working with. So when we do the tapping on the 24 lotus points, it takes it directly in to these flows, into the natural etheric atomic interface of the Yan-Yun flows, and that begins its cycling outward into the sphere. Some of them are smaller, but most of them run on the 12 thing. They said there are ones that actually run on 4s and 8s separately, which I didn't. I said, please not now. I remember saying, can we do that later? Is it essential to now? They said, no, we just thought you might be interested in knowing. I said, great. This is where it has to do with the different forms of crystals that can be created as base forms. And our systems were built on the ones that were shown. But there are systems that are smaller that were created with less scope. They weren't created to be massive 15-dimensional systems and full vecas. And there are ways of using the frequencies in still a base 12, but dividing it in certain ways that aren't the usual Chris code ones. They're meant to be finite, but not in a way that sucks energy off other stuff. So there are other versions, actually, of crystal bodies, is what they're just said to me. And I think that's basically what he's just explained, isn't it? There are other shapes of crystal bodies that they can take, but the Christos ones, the ones that are eternal life that will continually generate sparks, are the shapes of the ones shown. And all of this is generated through those. This is becomes interesting because it looks kind of like an eyeball, doesn't it? And it's known as one, which is really interesting. The next diagram, I think, is the one where they showed that stuff. And this is the one that was rough. This one of the last ones I was doing. And I was determined I was going to get it on paper, get it down. Yeah, this will be cleaned up at one point. This, again, is showing more so in relation to your body. You have your body and your Cathara grid, your density Cathara grid. This is showing the, which capsule goes that way? This is the magnetic axiotonal lines, which means they are the natus positive lines coming down. And this would have the, that would have the Yun flow, right? The female flow. Yeah, that would have the female flow, and that would be the female capsule deflection field from around the positive natus lines. And that one's the other one, the upside down one, that's the electrical one. When you put these together, they form this. And again, the drawing's a bit rough. This one is our, this is the ethos. I'm not showing the Ka and the Tha clearly. You can't really see them real clear, but they're in there. See, there's the arc in there. This is the ethos, and this is the eros that we mainly work with. When you bring those together, you're bringing the Ka and the Tha together as well. It's folding the thing out. But these guys over here correspond to the same setup in the parallel. So the parallel body in the echoloti has the same type of setup. Now what's interesting is that center area where you put the two of them together and it looks like an eyeball. You even have like the pupil and the iris with the Sha and the Ra force, and then the flame bodies around it. It's hard to see the shape quite as clear on this one. You could see it better on that other one where it didn't have all the axiom and meridian lines running. But that's known as the third eye of Ra. Then you have the right eye of Ra, which is the light cell of the PKA loti ethos light cell that's over here in their configuration. And this is the beginning of the Matrodon configuration being reborn in the Vecca system, because it's the same formation of light cells that the Matrodon cell itself sets creation in the Eka in motion with. And this over here is the left eye of Ra. They've also been called, because of certain individuals' vanity in the universe, yes, the eyes of Horus, yeah. When they're used properly, you don't need to worry about these. They're not yours. They belong to your parallel. What you use is the third eye of Ra. That's yours. And as long as you mind your business and your parallel self minds its business, it all works just fine. But it's when you try to take this and do stuff with it and combine it with that in ways it doesn't belong combined that you end up with some very strange currents. And that's what basically has been done. When we talked about the Merkaba mechanics quite a while back in the Dance 4 program, and we talked about how they've tilted the Merkaba over here and the one in parallel so that they meet across the Ark of the Covenant gate system in an unnatural angle to form the beast machine. Well, that does some really strange things to these as well. It's twisting the natural relationships between them, not to mention locking the pillars so they can't expand and contract, which means they can't breathe. So I just thought it was interesting that, you know, if we can visualize this a little bit, that we have these, we're in these. These are closer than even the crystal capsules, right? You have them on each dimensional level, so they're inside you, but they also extend out beyond your body. So each dimensional level of yourself has a set of flame cells that are a reflection of the bigger ones above. You have a density set, and then you have the full crystal body sets that progressively go up in the 5 levels of the crystal body anatomy. So try to sense for a minute just the size of this. Try to get to just kind of push your consciousness out sideways, just to see if you can feel a parameter. Don't worry about the person sitting next to you. You know, just make it as if you're not next to anyone, so you just won't be aware. You won't pick up on their field. They won't pick up on yours. Because what you're wanting to do is find out if you can find the parameters right now of your capsules, because they are there. And it's interesting. Most people just don't think about looking for them. You can find the parameter of your field. Sometimes it'll be way out there. Other times it'll be like squashed up where you're actually walking like this because you feel like you're in a room that's too short. You know, and it's actually your field, right? That you've contracted it for some reason. You can learn to expand and contract the flame body and to use it for fascinating things. Like, for instance, you could actually get an accurate temperature reading by expanding your flame field out there. With a bit of practice, you could know what temperature it was. You could know what direction the wind was blowing. You could actually, if you got really good, have eyes anywhere on that sphere that you wanted, where you could actually see 360 without moving your head 5 miles away. So there are things that are natural to do. There are natural attributes of your biofields that you just probably never thought of before. Really neat things. Now, they tend to give you a bit of resistance, particularly if you have a soul that's really Christic and really, you know, that's important to it. If you're going to, like, go try to see what your neighbors are up to and you're being nosy or, you know, trying to do some damage or, you know, venting on somebody, it's not going to help you. You know, your feel is like, forget it. I'm going to make it so you can't even feel me. You know. But when you're being mature, your fields, actually, that's a part of your consciousness. It enjoys interacting with this part of your consciousness in that way. And you can do some really useful things as well. You can find things, like I'm going to go project over and drag her over by the hair. No, by the astral hair. Where are you? I'm worried about Lex because I haven't seen her. No. Is she all right? She is on her way. Good. Yeah, I just don't like it when dirty angels are about, to have her. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was a bit distracted by that because I don't like the company that's flying around in the air at the moment. You know? So anyway, we have a lot that we can do with our bodies and our flame bodies, but we're going to have that capacity expanded hugely once we're able to open the breathing tube. Because once we open the breathing tube, we can begin to consciously spin the top shields and the side shields on the chariot of fire, which is, remember those the vortices, the vorticets, the stair-step vorticets that come down through the shields, and there's also the set that comes over this way, the parallel light ones. We can learn to consciously feel where ours are, and you can consciously request them to move. And you can do all sorts of neat things. Your flame body and your crystal body will actually teach you. It'll remind you how to use it, because there's a part of you that never forgot, the part that is that body. So it's an adventure when you start plugging this back in, or plugging your consciousness and your biology back in to your natural anatomy on the flame body level. One of the biggest things you can do to get out of your own way is to stop thinking of yourself in terms of being little powerless humans that are totally mutated. You might be taking on that disguise, but you took it on so you could clear it and get it out of the way so you could get on with business. And business is what you came here to do. And each one of you know exactly what that is. But I bet there's not a whole lot of you who remember that you know exactly what that is. I know. I remember in pieces too. You know, I get a chunk of it. Aha, yep, that was part of it too. Right? And it's usually during or after the fact. You know, as you walk through a drama and you find your fields doing certain things, like, you know, having strange things up at the Torah and Michaelmas. Whoops. It's like, yeah, that was part of it too, wasn't it? I didn't remember I was supposed to do that. But you have any knowledge that you're trying to find about yourself. What are my soul contracts? Do I have a soulmate here? All that stuff. You don't need to ask another person to find that for you, because it's in your fields. It's in your teliospheres. It's in your crystal body. If you've ever thought it, it's there in any lifetime. Interesting. A lot of memory records you got there. Imagine trying to download it into your cells here. Be like, feel like I do after a day like today, which is like, I have no brain. Mind wipe. Just a little bit gone. But you can start using this anatomy for very practical things or for exercise to start to play with it. If you ask for training in conscious Merkaba use, like so you can travel, if you would like to be able to get out of your body, don't go calling on an angel to help. Call on yourself. Say, all right, self, you can call the part of you that is the Laetore flame. You can call the part of you that's connected to the Laedore flame. You can call the part of you all the way up there that's the Adandra flame. Call on your flame self that's holding a part of your consciousness. All of that information that you could ever want. If you can think of the question, it has the answer. That part of yourself. And it's you. It's you as the Son of God. All right? S-U-N. If you remember that you're a son, you can extend your rays of light to any corner of any creation in the universe and touch the answer to the information you're looking for. So if we start to think big, most people here have mediocre lives because they choose to think small because nobody ever told them that they could think big, and actually their life would expand when they did. We spend so much time investing in what we don't want to manifest. There's hardly any time left to manifest what we'd like to see. When we begin to take on the knowledge consciously of the crystal body, there's a responsibility that goes with it. This is power. This is pure power. Power that was given to you by Source. Power that you have a right to use. Source was such a loving, and still is such a loving being, that it gave to the creations it chose to create the ability to create like itself. That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. That's like the keys to the kingdom right there. Even to the degree where it allowed to create the opposite expression if that's what its creations desired. It wasn't a preference, but it allowed for free will. You have a huge gift. And when you start to turn these back on, it's going to be important to pay attention to your mind, because you're going to amplify your powers. Now, that can work for you or against you. If you sit around thinking a lot, oh, my life is really a bummer, this is really bothering me, I'm really sick of this, watch the word sick. The body knows what the word sick means down here. I have to correct myself all the time. I'm really sick of this. No, I'm not sick. I'm not sick of this at all. I would prefer to be doing something else. How's that? Yes. But I watch how I use words, because my body responds to words in a certain way that I might not think it's going to do. When you start to get you're getting your manifestation powers turned back. When the pillar of power and the breathing tube are opened, this starts to process. You start to get bits of memory here and there, probably in the dream state first. And you may feel like, a fleet of ugly ducklings attacked you from some pit in hell when you go through some of the astral purging. And I'll warn you, it's probably not attack, all right? At this point, you got enough flame running in your fields where it's going to be, most people will think twice before they bother with you as far as somebody to harass in the astral, because you're going to give them more trouble than it's worth, okay? I mean, when you realize if somebody comes at you in the astral and they're like in your face, you can go right back at them and actually freak them right out and they go running. I mean, you don't have to worry about it. But you need to be aware and to be careful, a little bit careful, when you use techniques that we're going to be given through this workshop, like the beginning one tonight, but especially once the planetary grids activate, which will allow us to open the zendradon. Take learning to direct the amazing powers of your mind a bit more seriously. All right? Self-awareness, which is, what is that mind chatter that's going on while you're just going about your days, while you're doing the dishes, while you're driving the car? Catch yourself. Watch yourself. What are you thinking? A lot of us don't even ask. It's just like it goes on autopilot in 6 different directions at once, and really start to try to pay attention to what is your consciousness doing. If it were a beam of light, how many different directions is it bouncing off of at one time? Now, if you want to manifest something, if you have it bouncing in 6 different directions, you're going to manifest 6 different pieces of 6 different things. But if you were aiming for one, you're probably going to miss because your consciousness was all over the place. If your thoughts are fragmenting all over the place and you have this conversation going here because you had a fight with your mother, and you have this conversation going down here because you're wondering what you're going to do on Monday when you go in to talk to your boss, and you're really thinking about, I really remember when I went on that vacation, I'd love one right now forever, that kind of thing. There's all this chatter that tends to go on in the mental body, and most of it will be you. Some of it won't be. Some of it will be the broadcasts that are coming through the planetary grids now that'll say, oh yeah, she does really make me mad. It'll pick up on whatever little you have and go and add energy to it. So you'll think it's your own. And you'll find yourself really aggravated at somebody or something. Think before you release that energy and go, is this really mine? How often do we think, when we notice a thought in our head, how often, or a feeling, or an emotion that comes up, how often do we even ask ourselves, is this mine? Most people assume it is, because it came through you, it's inside you. That's no guarantee it belongs to you. That's no guarantee it's yours, especially in this day and age, when the Metatronic broadcast system is just going all through the grids and hitting whatever can anchor it. If we become aware of our minds, and a little bit more there's a term I've heard. What is the term? There's a really good mindful. That's it. Mindfulness. Yes, being mindful of yourself, getting to know yourself a little better. Yeah, what do I think about? I don't know. Because a lot of times, the chatter just goes on and on. You need to rein those parts in a little bit and say, okay, guys, let's have a powwow. Let's have a little meeting because we're getting some power here. Now, if there's anybody that's upset about anything, talking to the parts of yourself that might be having conversations, you need to sit down in your head and talk with them for a little bit. And sometimes you'll also find that they're actually not you after all, and don't freak yourself out and get scared. Say, okay, you may have been in this body for a very long time. We may have been sharing it, and I didn't know that. But you know what? It is mine, and I'm going to keep it. So I think it's time to leave. If you need a host, we'll be glad to find you one. However, you'll find this. There's elementals stuck all over us, like glue. They've been here, some of them, since before Atlantis, some of them from the Lemurian dramas. It's time to find who we're made of, and the parts that really aren't who we are, we can help them get to where they need to get to, but they don't have a right to live in your body with you. There's been a lot of trapped Jehovian souls hanging out in people's abdomens lately. Okay? I'm serious. And they're not trapped. They chose to stay there because they were really, really hoping to snatch the body, but it didn't work. And they kind of got stuck. Like, well, I don't have anywhere to go if I leave it. Maybe they'll slip up, and I'll be able to push back up. Because they get squished down when our indigo selves come in. They get squished down lower and lower, and they tend to get stuck around here. Particularly in women, they tend to get stuck around here. I don't know where they get stuck in guys. This seems to be a woman thing. I haven't met any males that had the Jehovian stuck in the abdomen syndrome. But I've heard a few girls. Yeah, and you literally have to talk with these people. And I'm serious. I told you about the one I found. That was why it took me forever to be able to anchor into, like, my feet. I used to walk around with my feet about up here, my astral feet, because with the walk-in, I couldn't quite finish it because there was something in the way, and I finally found it. It was Jehovian hanging on for dear life to my ovaries. I said, no. I said, excuse me, you don't belong here. It was mine. I should have won. It should have been mine. Well, it wasn't, and it isn't, and you're going to leave. Am I going to help you leave, or are you going to be nice and go find your family all on your own? And it wasn't. It took a couple of weeks of negotiating with it. And I gave it a chance. I mean, it could have decided it was going to like grab an ovary and run with it. You know what I mean? So I figured, it's worth being a little peaceful here. But this is the time when this stuff is going to be coming into our awareness. We're up-leveling the subconscious mind. How else are you going to become conscious? You can't become conscious if all that stuff that's stuck down there in the D2 levels in your body cells is going to hang out there, and you're going to pretend it doesn't exist. It does exist. These are attachments, elemental attachments. You might find fairies, you might find trolls, you might find frogs. God knows what you'll find in there. You might find birds, beasts, I mean, all sorts of the trees. I'm serious. They might come out as shadow forms. It's really funny. And if you're doing Kathara healing and realize that these things are here, you might start seeing them in other people, and don't freak. Sometimes you see like really ugly maggots in like astral wounds and stuff when you're starting, Yeah, and that's like when you really put the rubber gloves on and stuff on the astral, because you really don't want to pick up any of that stuff because it's not friendly, right? So these are the times when we're going to start to get more awareness of this kind of thing, that it is here. And it's not that, oh, these terrible things are happening. No, they've been happening all along. You just didn't know it. At least now you're becoming aware of stuff that needs to be cleaned up. It's a good time for cleaning up, and the best place to start is with what you're going to let yourself think about. Because if you get this power back, and you're having a bad day, you could really manifest yourself a worse one just by putting energy with the pillar, in your breathing. Once you open your pillar and you breathe, your pillar has its power, and you are giving your body and your mind and your emotional body back its power. Don't be afraid to do that. But if you're a little, what would I do if I got what would I do if I got instant manifestation abilities back? Go hide somewhere and really be careful about what I thought about before, and see if I could maybe be sure that, am I ready to do this? Because what if I had a random thought, that was just like an overreaction to something or something, and bang, it manifested. What if I said, I'm so angry I could kill that person, and all of a sudden they just keeled over and died? Oops. What type of training do you think we'd have to go through if we got to walk through a portal tomorrow back to inner earth, and all of a sudden it was all ours again? All the power. There would be training about how not to let this take over and go on tangents and do things that cause harm to other people. So the training kind of begins here, and that's what we're doing. Part of learning the anatomy is part of that training. If you don't care enough to learn the anatomy, you shouldn't bother with the techniques either. That's what it comes down to. Because you just want something to play with, And that means there's a responsibility level that's not being looked at. But you guys are great. So anyway, we'll get back to this. This is a wonderful group of people. I've not had people going in the audience yet. It's been a while since we've had any of those. What, sweetie? How many? Okay. Okay. We'll get through them. Oh, these were the ones that had me ready to quit. I'm serious.
What did you say?
I was going to quit the speaker part. Like, I will do the silent speaker part. I will run the data banks into the grids, no problem. I mean, and here, if you rip my tongue out, I'll still do that. But when it comes to this, it gets so rough in translating sometimes when it's all spins and direct, those type polarities and stuff. Oh, my God. But we got through them. What these are the top view of the axiotonal lines. If you're looking down at the spheres, right? So you're looking down this way at them. This would be the front. That would be the back, right? That would be the right side. So it's like looking at them this way. What you do is you get a view of the top shield, and these would be the lines coming up, arcing to the top, right? What these show are the precise alignments of the currents. These two wheels show you the axiotonal lines, which are the A lines, right? It shows you that this capsule is spinning counterclockwise. These little things show you that each of the lines is like a little pillar that's actually spinning counterclockwise. It shows you that it's a counterclockwise spin, which implies that it is a negative 11 2/3 frequency, and that's the ethos one, eros one, and it has a positive node, right? So these little charts are showing you all of the alignments, basically. And that will come in, it'll become more important later. What they wanted to show most of all was when you see the alignments, then in the next chart, and I'll get through these in a second, in the next chart it'll show how between those, these other currents form, how things combined with each other to form the other ones, how the axiotonal spin in the counterclockwise direction forms the Magnus spin in the clockwise direction, and that kind of thing. So it gives you an orientation to how these spins work, and it also keeps tracks of the spins for you, so you do know what lines are where. At some point in healing, there would be applications where it's important to know exactly what lines are where and what they're doing. The type of healing we're going to learn involves the chakras this time, which you don't have to have charts like this memorized to do. I don't know what they're going to do with them yet, but the symbols that go with the code that you received, the monadic code that you were given, there are separate symbols that go with each of the chakras. There's 12 of the chakras, and they realign the chakras into their natural seals, which we'll get into toward the end of the program, where you see where they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to form, and they're actually off by a half step, most of them at this point, because they've aligned them with the wrong seals. And it's the grid twist and the graviton vortex actually pull them into the wrong alignment. So they're running frequencies they shouldn't be running, at angles they shouldn't be running them. And the chakras bring energy directly into manifestation. They kind of interface between the spiral, the Rishite spiral, and the etheric atomic system of the lotus points and the Yanyun flow and all of that. So if you mess up the chakras, you're going to mess up those other flows, which means you're going to mess up the atoms that come out on the other end. Right now, we're going to be able to use technologies. They call that code also the manifestation wheel, or the medicine wheel. There's going to be things they show us how to do with that as we go along, so hang on to those, because we are going to use them. They're going to grow. There's going to be more codes added to them. And at some point, they're going to teach us how to use them in manifesting, not just for healing, but in manifesting. I mean, healing can take many forms. You may need healing in your bank account, that kind of stuff. And that's all right for the right reasons. There's no reason in hell why you're supposed to be here and suffer and drag yourself through misery and watch other people be happy around you, and you don't even have enough to have breakfast in the morning, that kind of stuff. That's just an old martyr program that's running. Now, you don't think me first. You think, how can I serve? Just, universe, please put me where it's best for me to serve. And, you may not get rich overnight. Heck, we were broke for years. But we were happy because we spent most of our time studying with the guardians. Most of our evenings were spent up and taking down transmission. So, anyway, you can do healing with that code and this system. You can reprogram with that code all of these lines, actually. And the way to do it is through the chakras, because the chakras connect to sets of these lines. Like there are cords that run from the chakras to and from the line sets. But the best way to reprogram something is to go and use the radon cells. If you can get something embedded into the radon cells, you put it right into the etheric body holding center. Once it releases into the pillar, it'll go through the whole system. It'll program the taliyas, and it will program, your hologram. So we actually have the ability to consciously choose our hologram much more than we realize. We're not going to get instant, I'm God fully now, and I can, make universes happen. Not yet. It'll be a while before we can do that. But that's how universes happen. That's how they're created. God thinks them into being. He doesn't, wave a magic wand, and it's the wand that has the power. No. And we were created in the image of God. It's our consciousness and the ability to think with the gift of free will and the apparatus of the Son of God crystal body that we have. That's it. We are created in the image of God. I think the crystal body is about the closest portrait you really could get. It doesn't have a beard, and it's not necessarily Jewish. Okay? Or Muslim or anything else. Hindu. Right? Well, not necessarily male either, right? And that doesn't mean it's female either. It's everything and all things and no things all at once. Anyway, over here. Can I show this one before I go? I do like to, at least since they're sitting there, I might as well describe them. This is interesting. Here we had the axiotonal lines, right? And these are, again, in the same place. They're actually running through. It would be the same circle, but it would have been confusing to look at that way. So I just put this one inside because it actually has, the axiotonals are 11 2/3, whereas the meridians are 33 1/3. So I made them the bigger circle. But they're technically in the same size in the same place. They just have a different charge. But so you can see the alignments of them. You have the meridians, electricals running on these, and then between them you have the axiotonals, the magnetics running. The magnetics run up toward the top. The axiotonals run downward, right? Again, you're looking from the top of the sphere. The circle in here, it'd actually be looking down on, again, the pillar of power. And whatever you see around here, you would also see a smaller version of it inside there. So whatever layer is out here would also have a layer inside the pillar of power. So there's tons and tons of layers. By the time you get down through 5 teleospheres and all the things in every one of those teleospheres, then 5 Hoopa bodies, there's a lot of stuff inside that pillar of power. And at the core of all that stuff is where you have the spark generation capacity. And that's where your breathing tube is, and that's what we're going into activating. Over here, it's just showing you the radius lines and the natus lines. I think I made these at a time when I wasn't sure which ones were electrical and which ones were magnetic, because that was one of the ones that was flipping back and forth. So this morning I had to change all the arrows and stuff because I had them wrong. And I knew it was. That's why I didn't let it go. That's sitting there. There's something I'm not happy with that, and I don't know what it is. And until I have the polarities for sure, I'm not going to present it. But I got it straightened out this morning, fortunately. It was nice to be able to use these. They took forever to do. There's a lot of little arrows on those. This is simply showing you the sets together. Again, they're all in the same place, really. You have the natus lines. You have the radius lines. And, of course, you'd have the capsules in between these that go with them and the deflection fields. But I'm just showing the line sets themselves. And you could also show all of those other layers. And you have the axiotonal lines, and you have the meridian lines. And it's simply showing the polarity alignments, whether it's coming down from the top or going up to, from the bottom. And some of these may not be finished. I have to look at these. Yeah, that's going up toward, magnetics up toward the top and electricals down. Yeah. So technically all the little white ones should be pointing away from the center, and all the little dark ones should be pointing toward the center, because the center means top. All right, so that's top right now, because you're looking down on it. And that's just to help you to understand how the lines line up. That it's a very particular, it's very specific. It's not just randomly you have these shield things with some nodes on it that makes some lines. Very specific. And to understand the mutation, it helps to understand that there is a very specific pattern that has been altered and broken and turned into a pattern that wasn't intended to be there. And that's what's holding the mutation in order. This is just showing that one on the bottom bigger. So the flows are there. It's also showing that there are these currents generated between them by the interactions of straight lines sets were what you saw before, where you have the meridians here, right? And you have the axiotonals here. You have the radius here. You have the natus here. And then in there you have the pillar of power. Right? Here's where we start to show the fields that are generated. Now we know that the meridian lines had generated a backflow. Now where did they start? The meridian started from 12. Find M12. Okay, I think meridians are electrical. Their spin should start from 12 and go clockwise, technically. So they should be moving this way. I don't know if I have that arrow in there. Yeah, actually they should start here. So there's very specific where the spins start too, by the way. This is where Merkaba fins come in, and things like that, like where the fins on Merkabas point to the front or point to the back. It has to do with where spins start and in what direction they go when you're talking about lines and nodes and capsule and all sorts of things that spin. There is a front, there is a start point, and the magnetics tend to start at 6 and go counterclockwise, and the electricals tend to start at 12 and go clockwise. So you're dealing with the meridians here. The meridians are ethos, which is clockwise, positive. So they're going this way. They're actually going from here, though. I need to move that arrow over here, because that's 12, but not 12 for the meridian. See, that's M12. So M12 is meridian 12, M1. These are back to the nodes that create the lines. So now in between the meridians and these would be the axiatonals. And again, they're in the same place. So just by these two rubbing against each other, there's different currents that are made, where units from these pull toward units from these, and they create another current of units. You also have a backflow coming from each one that even if they weren't rubbing together, you'd still have from here, from 12, you'd have the meridians shield spinning this way, and it'd be generating a backflow current counterclockwise this way. And then you have the same thing happening with this, and it would happen on both sides of the line. So you'd have like a current being generated here, going backflow that way, and one coming here. Think of a boat going through the water. You know how for the point of the boat breaks the waves, where you get the backflow of the waves as the boat's moving through. Well, it's kind of the same effect, where through the field, the scalar field that the shield is moving through, as one current is moving one way, it is creating a backflow effect of two in the other. So these currents, the backflows, start to interact with each other and combine and form different types of flows, and then they create different types of flows. It gets very, very complex. What we have here, just some of them shown. This one, which one is that? All right, this one with the little circles is just the symbol I happened to use at the time because they were getting too many lines and hairy-looking things, so I figured circles. This one happens to be the 21 2/3 manos. That current is called the manos, and it's etheric atomic. It says together the counter-rotating positive ethosphere, which is the ethos meridian lines, and the electrosphere and the erosphere, axiatonal, and magnosphere interact to form the counter-rotating fields of the 45 charge lotus sphere and the 21 2/3 charge manos etheric atomic backflow currents. So these particular ones are called manos, and when you subtract the 33 1/3 positive from 11 or if you subtract the 11 2/3 negative from the 33 1/3 positive, you would get the 21 2/3, and it still have the charge of the stronger charge one. So the manos current begins to circulate down, and that becomes one of the atomic ones, but it goes through the mixer of working through the natus lines and working through the pillar of power, and there's about 3 or 4 different things that happen, including being run through the Rushite spiral and into the chakra systems, where blending and bending and moving around the different currents and combining them with each other forms a whole set of different ones. And the whole set, the primary set, are the 15 rays, the atomic rays. But of course that implies there are 15 etheric rays as well. In fact, there are probably 15 ethos rays and 15 eros rays, I wouldn't doubt. We haven't got that far yet. That's just what I need. I'm sure they all have names too, as far as tonal signatures. This is to remind us about those transfiguration points. This shows you on the teliosphere where they were. Remember, there are the points in where you have the Cathara grids coming together. You'd have this particular one. We have, say, Cathara, that would be Cathara 3 from this grid. That would be Cathara 12 from that grid. And it would be Cathara 4 from that grid. Okay? So they would be the Cathara centers, or the signet centers, from the teliosphere Cathara grids that form the transfiguration points. And they are the points that the heliopath lines, the radionic heliopath lines, angle through. They're also to go into and out of the crystal body and the more etheric body structures going down toward the center. They're also the points of energy through which the crystal body draws frequency from the magnos and the eros fields to form the crystal bodies. So these are points that change. They transfigure the type of energy. They take the energies that are characteristic of the outer fields, which we're learning a little bit about, are called pulsar plasma waves, and they transfigure them into things that are more closely resemble density currents until you get all the way down to the teliospheres that are closest, like the 8.5 and the 6.5 ones that are at the center, the smaller ones, where they would be downstepping it right down into the atomic 15 ray currents. That we know. But each one takes it down to an atomic level. So you'll have a bit of an atomic level. It may be up at D12 atomic level that would be created by those outer spheres as well. Just like the lotosphere that runs from D13 to D13. That creates the D13 primal light field. And there's actually 2 more above that get into the Lota crystal body. They have to do with the D14 field and the D15 field. D15 is basically formed by when you expand out the 5 Hoover bodies. They actually expand out the ray currents, and it creates an interaction that creates the D15 ray frequencies. But there are other currents that come with the D14 and parallel D14 that plug directly into the LOTA, and that's why, like, the Merkabah seals are up at parallel 14 level. It's not just parallel. They're not just in the LOTAM. They actually go through to the LOTA. So this is just showing you, reminding you that these points exist and showing you what they look like on the sphere. I don't think anywhere else they actually outline them, like circled them all to show you what they are. So that's there. There's going to be at some point they're going to show us some interesting stuff takes place there, because that implies a grid of some sort, doesn't it? It's this little zigzaggy grid that happens here, and it happens here, and here, on that level, and up there. So there's other things that happen there, and hopefully we don't have to know about them anytime soon, because I think we've got an awful lot of anatomy to deal with as it is. Most of these graphs are new ones. They're showing you the various parts. This is simply, showing your density 4 body in relation to your teliosphere and what would be your chariot of fire, your stair-step vortices and the parallel light stair-step vortices. This is also where the staff vortices would come through when you merge with the loti from PKA universe, when you become the LOTAM. So it says the embedded density 4 body of the lotus sphere diamond sun crystal body. And that would imply, remember how we saw those when we saw that there's like bodies within bodies going down? So that's your biggest one. That's your like density 4 level guy. And then you have your ethos imprint that hangs upside down under your feet. Next one. I'm going to go through these rather quick so we get on to the important stuff that's going to require some real explaining as far as the phasing of the pillar and the matrodome. Okay. Now, this is just, again, showing you more about the PCM Lodi 5 radial body and 5 density body, Kathara body, light, sound, blueprint, morphogenetic fields. This is just showing you what I just explained on the other one. I said, remember, this has the 4 embedded grids within it, even on one density level. You have D1, 2, 3 Kathara grids, and then you have the density level Kathara grid. Well, it works the same way going up through the densities. You have density 1, density 2, density 3, density 4. And then you go up into the Kathara grids that go with the body levels, the etheric body levels. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. These are showing the lineups of where what. I mean, each one of them has a 12, right? And each one of them has a 1 and all the spots in between. So if you start with the big one, the one that is part of the entire template, the one that runs from 13.5 to 13.5, you can find relative places on that grid as far as where other things come in. Now, those other things have Kathara grids that have their own numberings on them. But in this particular one, this shows you that at 11.5, which would be, see, it would be 11.5 on the big grid. You have 11, you have 12. Halfway between them is 11.5, right? 11.5, that's where you have the zendradon seal. 1.5, that where you have part of the zendradon seal. Part of the nadradon seal is at 1.5, and this is where that body would fit in relation to your large body Kathara grid that runs from the monadic blueprint, D13.5, 13.5. This would be your first Kathara grid expansion, the biggest one. So they all actually tuck in there at different levels that would be dimensional levels, or 0.5, which are Eka dimensional levels on this Kathara grid. So we have the 4.5 and 8.5 body, and these 0.5s become important because the 0.5s are running the etheric spectrum and the Eka etheric spectrum, basically. So when you have the 0.5 scale, you're dealing with either or both of the etherics or the ecolatorary spectrum, but up higher, the atomic spectrum, as opposed to the regular dimensional spectrum down here, the 15 rays, that would run with the Kathara centers, because remember, they're the dimensional programs. This becomes important with the chakras, because the chakras run at the 0.5 levels, which means there is, at somewhere toward the end of this chart pack, a graph that begins showing you where the chakras actually are stationed in relation to the Kathara grid, which is something I've been curious about for a very long time. So how do they fit in there? I know we have charts showing the chakras, but now that everything's being aligned on the Kathara grids, which means everything should be aligned on the Kathara grids, where do these things fit? they said, oh, they run the 0.5 spectrum. It took me a while to figure out what that was. And I said, here, do this. Oh, okay. So they had me do this, realizing that if this was D1, that was 1.5, where halfway between 1 and 2. Kind of common sense, actually. It just seemed complicated when I was first trying to explain it to myself. This one is showing those levels of the body. You have the D13.5 lotus sphere, which would be the outer circle, and that's inside of the crystal body structures, right? Then you'd have the D13 monad, right? Then you'd have the 12.5 logosphere that runs 12.5 to 0.5. There's a 0.5 seal, and 12.5 would be up here. So that would be the etheric blueprint for the D12 rayon field. All right? This is where you get your radial body fields. These 0.5 scales are the etheric blueprints. They're the blueprint levels for the fields that manifest in terms of our 15 rays, which would be the Latore rays on them. So we have the D13.5 lotus sphere is the blueprint for the D13 monad. The D12.5 to 0.5 logosphere, which is this one, is the blueprint for the D12 rayon field. The D8.5 to 4.5 ovosphere here is the blueprint for the D8 to D5, there should be 5, Miage field that we've talked about before in the radial body training. And the D11.5 to 1.5 photosphere is the blueprint for the D11 to D2 trion field, trion light field. Now, the D6.5 to 11.5, here's where we start to get the smaller ones that actually come out of the 6.5, what's called the zendradon. This is the one that expands into, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? This is where you get your ka and your ra and your tha and your ethos and your eros and that sha that's hidden behind the center one. So these are the 6.5 to 11.5 is actually the blueprint for the beta huva body, right? The density 3 body, right? The 11.5 to Eka 0.5 is the Mahara Huva blueprint. So each of these would be the blueprints for the 5 Huva bodies that we've talked about forever. All right. Down here, 1.5, 0.5, the Raja Huva. The Raja Huva blueprint is actually down low, even though we tend to show the Raja Huva body up here. The template for it is down here. It's the D15, the one that goes down into D13, 14, and 15. So this is just trying to show you where these Huva body structures, these light cell structures, all of these things fit together. These teleospheres, here's all your teleospheres. And if you take the one large density Kathara, even if you put it in relation to your density Kathara grid that you would fit into this way, right? This would be the one big one around you. Then there'd be another one still around you, right? Still around your body. Then they're coming in, they're moving in. This one would be tighter around your body. This one would be actually running through your body and your legs would be sticking out of it. And this one would be inside of you. So it's showing you the smaller bodies. The last one, the Hovosphere, is actually inside you. And you're kind of inside it, and it's inside you simultaneously on the density level. But then you have that huge, massive structure of crystal body that does have its 5 imprints. So this extends way out in your fields. Right? That I haven't asked how many miles each level would be, but it's probably, I wouldn't doubt if it's several 100,000 miles, to be honest with you. I just get a feeling. I'll have to ask for clarification on how far do these stick out, because they're not right here. Your auric field levels, you have 15-dimensional auric field levels just on this level alone. That's without a whole other set of them up there for the eros and a whole other set of them down there for the ethos. By the time you get all these bodies expanded out, you're very large. We're all very large balls of beautiful light that have been suns that have wanted to be shining for a long time. And finally, we have to turn our rays back on. Anyway, and that's showing them all together, okay, where they're embedded within each other, showing the teleospheres in the crystal bodies. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to move a little faster, or I'm going to have everybody here very late, and they're going to kick us out of here at, we still have time. That's good. Don't move fast yet. Okay. This is just showing you a bigger picture of the embedded ones so you can see them. where you got this little one here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're basically your 5 bodies, and there's actually 8, where there'd be 3 more when you go up into the echolera. There's this you could call it a flame. It's sort of flame body, but it's part flame body of the lodum, but it's part flame body of the echolota as well. And it's something about the heliotropic something or other. There is a band of heliothallic lights, the metallic lights that are around the outside of the capsule between the lotum and the loti and the lota. So there's this band that they haven't told us much about yet, but I have a feeling it's going to be probably where those plasma waves come from. I wouldn't doubt those pulsar plasma waves. We got to find out, because they said next workshop. You know, enough for this one. Yes, I think so. So that would be extending out beyond here. It would be probably past 13.5, past 14, past 14.5 is implied by the fact that there is a 14, because if there's anything that is there, it implies there's a 0.5 one that holds its blueprint, that holds its morphogenetic field blueprint. Right? But we'll learn more about what's out here in relation to our connection to the echolota body once we learn to use the inner parts, once we learn to turn those on. Next one, please. Yeah, that's another variation, kind of given a little bit better size proportion. Like if that were you, kind of like a little speck in there. And that's really just like I said, it could be a few 100,000 miles out from you. That's just to show that, yes, you are very tiny at the center here, but isn't this awesome? Who needs a car when you got one of these? I mean, whoa. If you could learn how to use this, you could just like blink on and off wherever you wanted. It'll be a while, but this is our personal Christ body, and it's also our chariot of fire once you activate more of the capstones. These are called capstones, by the way, for those who don't know. And they have very specific node clusters at the top that are shaped in a shape of a stacked ruche. And it is through those node clusters at the tops and bottoms of the shields that the ruchete spiral runs from the eka. It runs its cords down through. And that would be considered the part of the monadic imprint. So we haven't gotten into that yet. But on these capstone shields, which are shields, if we went back to templates, somewhere back there it identifies exactly which each of those shields are. So, they're not just things that stick out funny. They're part of the anatomy that was explained earlier in the template section. Next one, please. And that's just reminding us that each one of those creates we have the lotosphere, the logosphere, the photosphere, the ovosphere, the hoovosphere, and that's the one that goes and opens up and down and makes all the little hoover body blueprints, okay? This is the one that expands into the 5 hoover body blueprints, where you have the 5 densities of self, and then they come back together, or they're supposed to come back together every time you inhale. But they've been stuck apart for a long, long time. That's what the gene code does right now, because the gene code is phase-locked because of the mutation with the arcs and the pillars stuck. The gene code is also stuck. So again, that's just showing you and reminding you of, these are meant to be kind of like at a glance, how can I find it fast? What was that? Charts where you can look at them and say, oh yeah, that's an ovosphere, and that ran where? Okay, it was the etheric blueprint for the Miage field. It ran 8.5 to 4.5 on the scale. And if you know that Cathara Center 1 is 1 and Cathara Center 2 is 2, the common sense place for 1.5 is right between them, right? Halfway between. Now, it gets a little tricky when you're going this way. All right, where would 2.5 be? Because you're going this way and this way. And if these are only running on the middle column, like say your chakra seals are in the center, right? How would you find that? That took me a while, too, to figure out. And they make me figure it out, too. And then they'll tell me whether I'm right or wrong. And if I'm wrong, they'll tweak it and say, try this, right? I figured it out, but it took me a while, and it was really dumb. Actually, the way to figure it out is measure the line between 2 and 3, right? Find the center point, and then draw a line straight over. And it turns out to be halfway between here and here, right? And if you do that on each one, between 4 and 5, if you want to plan 4.5, measure the line between 4 and 5, find its halfway point, and then draw a straight line over to the center line, and it will give you 4.5. So that's how the 0.5 scale is found in relation to the Cathara grid. That took me a while. And I could feel him out there. I said, will you just show me? I know you know. He says, it's really easy. I said, okay. So I really had to think about it. It was like one of those dumb puzzles I've always been terrible at, those mathematical puzzles where you sit there and you look at something that really isn't that hard, and you just scramble on it, and you swear you have to be Einstein. Yeah. Well, it was one of those. But I thought I'd explain that to you so you understand how the 0.5 scale comes in. And what that means is the 0.5 frequencies are the ones that are running from the echo level. All right, they're a step, they'd be a half step up from us. Their frequency bands run a half step up in frequency and intensity and all of that. They're also the I believe, base 24 system, I think, does that. There was one chart that had that all broken down as far as the Eka and the Veka. The Veka, the Eka, the Akasha, all the way up to the top. Remember, there's that one in one of the dance floor programs. Yeah, we'll be pulling that out again, I'm sure, soon. I can hardly wait. All the stuff that was hard to teach in the first place, I'm sure they're going to bring back again at some point. Hopefully it'll be easier the second time around. This is just showing you that through these, this is the spectrum that is generated. So through these etheric body structures that are part etheric, some are etheric atomic, some are etheric atmic, which would imply, more Eka than Veka frequency. But what they all come down to are the 15 ray currents that we're familiar with here. And it's a combination of the Laetore frequencies, D15 currents, combining with the etherics that actually form the atomics here. And this shows you where those things come from. This just shows you, it's really not exactly done, it's just showing you how these are embedded. It implies that the axiotonal line grids are embedded, which of course I could do another one with little Akasha capsules embedded and the eyes of Ra embedded, but I don't think I need to do that because I think you get the gist of how that goes. Yeah, it's just more drawings to make. Oh yeah, can I go hide now? Oh God. Yeah, can I? Yeah, really, can I join you? No. All right. Oh, this stuff. Yeah. What time is it? Okay. Oh, this stuff. This stuff was hard the first time around when we did it in Belize. Times like this, I'd like a cigarette. Okay. Now, I think I've been doing pretty good so far of linking things together, where I get a feeling that things that were kind of like, before have made more sense to at least some people here. Hopefully, we can keep that trend going. I find this stuff challenging, to put it mildly. Of course, it has to do with flames, and flames breaking down to form smaller flames, and those breaking down to form smaller things, and numerous seed atoms and cells and all sorts of things flying around up in the Eka out there. And when you're tired, it's a bit challenging to try to describe it. But I will try. Now, this is the infamous Matradon cell. Okay? This is enlarged hugely. It's actually at the center of the Eka base shield. Now remember, the Eka base shield is the Yanesa 15-cell seed atom. So in the center of its first cell, in the center of its 13th pillar, you would find the Matradon, which is a set of radiation units that form a specific configuration. There's actually 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the hidden one behind it, 6, 7. All right? So these are the 7 cells of the Mastrodon. The cells are Matradon. These are radiation units of flame from the other side. Regular currents, where you're not talking about etherics yet. You'd have your Yanesa seed atom here. You'd have the same thing in the parallel Eka. But the sparks that set those into motion are these little cells, these singular cells that would be at the center. If you put this and this together, it's another 15-cell seed atom together at, I believe, the Akasha level. And it's called the androdon. When it is split into polarization, one part in the parallel Eka, one part in the Eka, it forms 2 active flame cells. They actually interact with each other, allowing an open connection between. You go through the center of the Matradon and you pop up in the parallel Eka. And this is the electrical. These would be the electrical cells, the outer 7 electrical cells, just like we had the outer electrical cells in our seed atom. Right? these would be the inner magnetic ones. Because the Ettore flame, or the main flame, that is the standing radiation wave current that fuels our Eka, is the male flame. It is a base electrical as opposed to base magnetic flame. It receives the female matrodon cell and the petrodon, which is the daddy cell. That would be the daddy cell. This would be the mommy cell. Okay, matrodon and petrodon. Be over there. Now, this again is showing the breakdown of the flames, where we had the 45 Eka Ettore Trivecca seed flame. That came out of the higher up flames. When we get down here, it's showing you the monads. Now, this is something monad is a tough subject to teach because there's a lot more to it that requires going up higher into, I believe, the Akasha A level, and then bringing certain things down. There's certain lineups of numbers as far as what charge does that flame have and how many cells does that thing have, that it expands. There's something with the Chris code that still keeps its proportions but does something bigger as it gets up higher, and that's a whole other level. They'll get, if we get this far, then they'll probably teach us. We get to Inner Earth, we can take that class. I just don't want to teach it. But it gets weird. It gets wearying after a while, if that's a word. But the monad structure is actually formed by this. What you have, this says, let's see, I'll just read what it says and see if that helps. Okay. The male Akasha, the matrodon, mother, electrical, first cell set of our echoloda. All right, so that's the first cell set of our echoloda. It's been described as that. If you notice, there's that crystal body structure right in here in the way the signets line up in these Cathara grids. Yeah, see, right there. And there's also what would be a set of vector vortices implied by those alignments. But what's most interesting is it's up in here that, see, they've been giving me more bits on this, where you end up with a ka, the ka that goes with this lineup is here. The tha that goes with it is here. These two would phase this way under certain conditions, but first they phase this way for a 6 cycle, then they shift 45 degrees, and these two phase together, and these two phase together. What you actually have here are a set of lotus arcs. You don't see the top one, but that would be in the Eka axis alignment, where the Eka comes through this way on the Veka. So there's a phasing cycle that starts with the matrodon, and it's that phasing cycle that starts in the Eka base shield up here with the matrodon cells, those seed cells that were brought over from the other side that were seated in our flame, our Eka flame over here, that begin the process of phasing, where the eros and the ethos, or the tha and the ka, combined, and they form the ra. And the same thing is happening on a parallel axis. So the best way I can describe the matrodon right now is it's the beginning. See, I'm still learning about what this is, and I find it a bit challenging myself. I mean, I can read what they've said. It's okay. I get that part. I know how it phases, though, and that's the most important thing. There's more to the matrodon story that has to do with the petrodon, and it has to do with up here, these larger flames. You have the Adandrea Akasha seed flame, 360. That's your Adandrea 360. Okay? Adandra 360. That breaks down into 180s. The Iane Ettore seed flame and the Adane Adore seed flame. Now we're not down to the le yet. All right? They phase and they form a 360. And that creates an androdon 360. And this is the one that creates the 15-cell seed flame of the matrodon and the petrodon put together. That is the androdon. Now, I find all this rather fascinating and very complex. You know, I kind of scratch my head and go, oh boy, lots of flames up there. What are they doing? You know, these, of course, are not just shields. As we described earlier, even with the Yanesa, it is a shield, but it is also the living light cells, where these are cells that cycle. Inside of these, there's actually the lotus arc sets, where you have the flame cells cycling together, bringing the lotus arcs up, into what would be their central breathing column pillar, and then phasing out. So that whole phasing motion is set in motion by the cell of the opposite polarity that's of the twin. So the twin flame of the Le'atore is the Le'adore, the female. You put a bit of the female in the male, and it begins to phase, and vice versa. There would be a bit of our Le'atore frequency put inside the Le'adore flame over there, inside of their remaining Petrodon that goes with this one. It's because of these, each having half, that they can come together and phase together, which means you can pull the Eka and the parallel Eka together into one universe. And I have a feeling that has something to do with what Starburst is going to be about. Because they've given us a little bit on Starburst, enough to when we understand phasing a little bit better, we can understand, that looks like something that doesn't happen every day, and it's not. But the phasing is what's most important. Whether you're looking at it in terms of the Matrodon up here that gets a bit lofty, where you have all these big flames with big numbers doing all sorts of stuff that's a bit hard to follow, you have the same thing going on down in your body, where you have your Eros up here, your big circle here, and you have the circle around your body here that is your, call it your Ra. You could say you have your Ra, your Tha, and your Ka. But actually that would be using those terms loosely, because you also have your ethos that the Ka creates and the Eros up above that. So they tend to use it in terms of ethos and eros, because I think the Ra and the Ka can do some, the Tha and the Ka can do some other things as well, but they do phase at the same time. As you pull your ethos pillar up, it goes through your Ra pillar. But there's another level behind that I think there's something even more intense that can happen with the Ka cells and the Tha cells, but it has to be after the ethos and eros cells phase. Comes down to, there are techniques you can use to begin the phasing that will begin opening the pillar of power again. That will begin turning on those big arcs that are part of your diamond sun crystal body. And those arcs would go all the way up. They would expand. Each level of the 5 levels would each have their set of arcs that would reach into the next, that would reach into the next. And the final set would reach into the Eka. And they're going to give it live tonight before we leave, probably right before we leave, the beginning of how to play with those arcs. Because we can only play until the grids release the zendradon. And they're going to let us know whether, I was hoping you were going to let me know tonight. Maybe? Thanks. You just say, we'll let you know if we'll let you know. Yeah, Ma is quite funny, actually. Has a good sense of humor. He's fun. So this is up there in the lofty land of the Eka, where I tend to get lost playing with flames and figuring out who gave birth to who up there. You know, because it's really like flames birthing flames birthing flames. You put a mommy and a daddy together to make baby flames, right? Where do baby flames go? They go all over the place. You get these guys first, and you have your Ka, and your Tha, and your Ra, and your Sha, and then you got other guys that form from those phasing, and it gets a little out there. It's like a zoo of flames. It's nice to know we came down here this way. So there's a part of each of us and each one of those flames, which means a part of each of those flames is a part of our anatomy. So we are, just the fact that you're here implies that you had to pass through those to get there, and on your way down you couldn't take that much of you with you. That's how the flames get formed in the first place. They're collections of consciousness that came in to form universes and systems, because you can't take it all with you. It's like a plane that's too small when you come down here. You have to leave some stuff at home. You can't fit your whole household into the carry-on. And you kind of leave parts of yourself up in those frequency bands. And part of yourself is part of the Matrodon. Part of yourself is part of this. But primarily, part of ourselves, we pass through the flames, and that's where we leave a lot of our consciousness. So these flames are flames of consciousness, conscious awareness expressing in the form of electromagnetic energy. And that's just because that is the form that is the convenient form for manifestation. It is the form that works for manifestation if you want to experience manifest hologram. And there are other states of being way up there past the stairway to heaven that are beyond that, beyond light, beyond sound, beyond thought as we know it, beyond sensation as we can fathom it, actually. And it would probably be scary for a person from where we are here got immediately sent back home and aware. It would be an interesting feeling. It would almost feel like God was so big, it was so unpersonable, it didn't even know we were here. But that would only be our small concept of how big God was, because God's even bigger than that. So big that it has no size at all, which is even harder to fathom. So big, it has no size at all. It's so big, it's so tiny. But, yeah. There is a place where the universe is like that, where source and consciousness are like that. There is a place where what we call logic here can go so far in touching what consciousness is. And there is a place where words don't work anymore, where linear thought form doesn't work anymore, where the only thing that is real is direct cognition of all time and all space as illusion, but as real, all at the same time. It is a state you can hold some of in your body, particularly when you activate crystal body. But there are states in that space. But when you bring somebody who's holding those states into places like this, it tends to be a very bizarre experience for both you and them. Because this is like, oh, forgot it was like that, actually. Because it's very different when you're spaced out like that and just everything's bliss. Right? And you come to a place like this where there's sensation. And, oh, I walked in front of that car and I got flattened and I felt sensation and that wasn't pleasant. You know, that kind of thing. Where there's this like lack of emotional thing that would be experienced if you met someone from those levels. They would seem to be very unemotional. But they're not. They experience what we call emotion in a much different way. Where, kind of like Source does, where everything is beautiful and allowed and part of the game. And there is no such thing as fear. And there is no such thing, really, as good guys and bad guys. There are those who are joyously filling the original intention of Source, which was for a loving eternal life matrix, and there are those who chose the option of opposite expression. And there's no difference, scarily, between the love Source has for either. They're both loved. The same. So that means you don't get extra points for being good. Except you get a much more pleasant experience all along the way. And you get hugely appreciated. But the love is a condition that was given as part of the original gift, regardless of what was chosen to do with the gift, which is kind of nice. And it's a place we can evolve to. Once we get up into these spaces, that's when we can think about those things a bit more. Thinking about love is good here, and about being non-judgmental but still firm and assertive when necessary, that kind of thing. That's the lessons that we're having here. But when we get into these areas of the Eka, of the Metrodon, there's some very interesting lessons of a very broad, much broader level of consciousness. And the little emotional patterns that we get used to down here, they go away. And there's just things that worry you down here that they just go away. And they're not worrisome. And you have to actually remind yourself that, oh yeah, there was a time when that could have upset me. So if somebody's getting upset, you can find compassion and realize, oh yeah, that makes sense to some part of me. You know. But there is an evolution that as you bring these higher states of consciousness in, you may begin to feel all of a sudden something that, like I said, might have moved you one way or another, good, bad, or awful, or in between. A year ago, all of a sudden, it just doesn't faze you. It's okay. There's an indifferent type feeling. It's not a part of me anymore. Yeah. Your passions move higher. They move into bigger and broader things. That doesn't mean you don't still like the stuff you like, but you may like it in a broader way. So there are things, changes in yourself, that it's like an adventure. Who am I becoming? Am I becoming more me? What is that? I forgot. So it's like a treasure hunt. Anyway, let's get on to the next one. I think that's enough on the Matrodon. I'll be able to show you, yeah, this is closer, a bigger one. Because I want to, get in that back thing again. Right, the Matrodon. Yeah, this just shows you a bit closer. These all need to be cleaned up desperately. We have a photocopier that we lease that loves to leave dots all over everywhere. We're always going with the Tipex or the whiteout pens, trying to get rid of the dots, but they always come back. I think I've done this one 3 or 4 times, and it didn't have dots, and they're back. All right, the common Eka seed, from which our Echolote, Echolota PCM, Loti PKA, I'm reading this wrong, the common Eka seed, from which our Echolota PCM Loti PKA Loti, Lotum crystal body density manifestation emerges. So, this is the common seed that all of those things, all of the 3, the Eka, Lota, the PCM, Loti, I always get that one wrong, PCM, Loti, and the PCM low T and pKa low tide. There we go. All of those crystal body systems, those three, come out of this single cell, the matrodon cell, in the center of the echo base shield. Now, you think of this little tiny cell at the center of this big 15-cell base shield. Relatively, it is a very small cell at the center of this very large base shield. And that base shield is very, very large. If you think how many of those massive crystal bodies might be down here. Think of all the people on the planet. Think of all the people that have been on the planet, say, in the last 25,556 years. Think of all the other things that we don't know that are floating around in those things because we just don't see them every day. If those things are that big, our own are a couple 100,000 miles, let's say, across, how big might this be? It holds universes. These are light cells. They're living light cells, orbs of light that are connected because they're like akasha flame shapes. They're connected at the center point, and they phase through each other, and they spark when they phase. They create a pillar of power between them, one this way and one this way. And after they generate, after 6 cycles of contracting and expanding, actually expanding first, then contracting, it starts out as a single point, and then it exhales. That's why exhale starts the count, right? Exhale 1, inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 2, up to 6, and that's when this shifts 45 degrees, and these start to phase together, going into what's called first the anathalia, and then the ethanathalia state, and same time these guys do that. And these actually are like lotus arcs that phase together and then close up into the center and do I don't know what this does up there actually, but what we do down here when our bodies do these, there are various options. Once we do our 6 cycles, and every time we breathe 6 times, there's supposed to be sparking that happens in the central column, and those sparks accrete, and after I believe it's at least one set of 12, but I think it takes a couple of sets of 12 before there's enough spark generated in the pillar to create the shift. So there are sets of 6 cycles of breath that literally generate sparks in the pillar of power, and after 6 cycles, there's enough sparks generated to allow the shift of the ethos with its own eros, because in our crystal bodies, in our etheric bodies, in our light cells that are structured just like this. Okay, if this is the matrodon up in the eka, our etheric body structure, the cells of our own bodies, are like this, where we are in the center of one of these crystals. If we look at that crystal as our biggest crystal body, let's say, right, the lotus sphere, these would be very large light cells that phase and create a very large pillar around us, not just running through the center of us. That pillar would come down into each little dimension level until it was a small pillar inside as well. But it would also be this massive pillar that's formed by the parameters of the light cells, and it would be a column of energy. And that's precisely what we have. This is showing how the matrodon, way up there as the imprint in the echo base shield, begins the process. It sets the pattern for the phasing of units of radiation, of units of consciousness that allows for it. And those, again, are sparks of the flame, let's say. You have your standing flames, and these are like junior flames, sparks, that are put together in clusters of 7 or 8. There's actually an 8th one. It would be considered actually the laetore flame that the 7 are put inside of. And that would create the 8 inner cells, because there's actually 8 of the inner cells of the matrodon. But one of them is the laetore flame that they're set into. So, as far as I understand it anyway, I'm doing my best to explain this stuff, and believe me, there's a lot more on this. There are tomes on monad, because this gets into some very, very sophisticated electronic stuff as far as creating universes and things. And I don't think we need that training right now, so we're probably not going to get those books yet. And if we do, please give them to somebody else to translate. It's a bit much. So that gives you an idea of what phasing is. And I have some diagrams as we move along that will show you with your body in there. So you bring it down to earth, okay? This is the big part out there in the eka that you're connected to. Okay, what do we have here? There's just another one that's showing, again, the crystal body structure that forms around it. that forms within it. Okay. We have to write Metrodon, logos, photos, radiation matrices, and the motor. Oh no, I'm not even going to touch motor adhere tonight. Oh no. Yeah, I'm just talking to myself a little bit there. You can read this in your copies of this. I'm not going to even try to do motor adhere tonight because there are pieces to the information on the motor adhere. Basically, it is a series of sparks that are set into the grids. I mean, for the Eka level, they come from the Akasha level. From the Lotum level, the Veka level, they would come from the Eka. But they are a system of male and female sparks. They're not the big flames, but they work with the radon cells in some sort of way in the central vertical column, and they actually modulate the polarities of everything from the spiral to the phasing rhythms of the flame. There's a lot more to the motor adhere than they've given us so far. And I always feel frustrated trying to explain it because I can feel that there's this huge gap in my understanding because I haven't given that yet. And I know it's in certain books. It will come with certain things, and I'm not sure where. But they're kind of like letting us know at least motor adhere means male within the female, female within the male, actually. So it's the beginning of understanding the polarities, which is everything to do with the flame cells, their polarity interactions that allow for phasing, because it is the polarity charge that allows for the phasing, the attraction and repelling of each other. It's kind of like life down here in the dating game. Attract, repel, run toward each other, run away from each other. Still stuck together in the middle. Sort of. Anyway, so I'm not going to try to go into motor adhere tonight. There's something I'm waiting for on that, and I'm not sure what it is. I'll read this, but I'm not going to elaborate I'll just read it. I'm not going to elaborate. The motor adhere, male, female, polarity. The Metrodon projects outward within itself. What does that mean? Outward within itself. It means it's in here and goes and expands itself out by expanding within itself. Okay? So it projects outward within itself. The ethos, positive, and eros, negative, le'adore, two-cell set, forming the le'adore gender cell pair that form the Veka, pKa, and PCM primal light sound fields and project the le'atore two-cell set, forming the gender cell pair that forms the Veka, pKa, PCM, low-T, low-T density fields. That was a mouthful in itself. What? What did I say? By the end of one of those, I just... And when I'm reading this stuff, and I really have to, learn it for something, I have to break the sentence down in half. Okay, that said that. That means this. Yes. Part 2. What does that mean? So these are rather complex sentences and concepts, but I'll finish reading it, and you can read it too, and you may get more out of it than I do right now. I think I'm too tired. Now, gender cell twin flame sets are called the moda, male, adhere, female, cell clusters. Moda, positive electrical light cell radiation matrices of ethos frequency, electros, crystals, and their inherent electrospheres, and adhere, magnetic sound cell radiation matrices of eros, form the magnus crystals and magnospheres of the D12.5 etheric divine blueprint, through which the D12.5 logos initiates density creation through projection of the atmos at Ekaveka D1.5. Oh boy, there's a whole level of it, and then what happens? It's going to be just as complicated, probably more so than that, and there's probably 50 steps to it. So, at some point, there's more information on the Metrodon and on the things you'll find connected to the Metrodon are the phasing of light and sound cell units, which are ethos, eros, and you also have phasing of the Ka and the Ra, the Ka and the Tha to form the Ra. So it's about phasing units of radiation that generate more units of radiation and form living light cells. Some of them tiny that form, the structure that atoms are built on. Others are massive that universes are floating around inside of. So it is the basic core principle that the building blocks or the units of radiation themselves follow a very specific pattern that allows them to continually regenerate. And that pattern is the one demonstrated by the matrodon and the petrodon and the phasing. I don't know what the petrodon does over there. I'm still working on the matrodon over on this side. So it just says the 8 inner cells of the matrodon radiation matrix. The ECA first creation imprint consists of one ECA D13.5 low-dose matrodon first cell, inside of which forms, oh boy, here we go, 2 moda ethos light cells, positive charge, 2 adhure eros sound cells, negative charge, at ECA D13.5, 1 logos cell, ECA D12.5, 1 PCM low-T photos cell, ECA D11.5, 1 pKa low-T photos cell at ECA D11.5. Together, the radiation matrix cells of the ECA lota matrodon etheric mother cell form the 8 inner cells of the 15-cell which one is that? Androdon akasha seed atom. God seed. That's the akasha seed atom level. So this is going up into an area that makes me tired thinking about it, even when I'm not tired. But there'll be a lot more information on it. Hopefully, this will help you understand a little bit about more about the monad stuff. There's 1 or 2 others that at some point we'll get to on the monad. That it has to do with these flames that hold specific amounts of charge that mean you have specific amounts of energy that will be generated on very specific cycles, depending on how much frequency the flame has, a species or a planet or a universe. Like you will have a smaller seed atom, and the seed atom holds the seed flames of the monad, the seed radiation units. And you know how they talk about like radiation units having lives and half-lives and those kind of things? Well, it's kind of like how long is your matter form going to last, and can it regenerate itself? If it can spark, it can regenerate itself. And big things like planets and suns and those kind of things that are bigger than we are have larger charge. They'll still have the same proportions, but they'll have more of them. They'll have more of the same units. Say maybe they'll have like, if we have, we'll all have one monad, like everything would have like one monad, but it would have a matrix of radiation around it that might have, say, 6 sets of replicas. Some might have 200 billion sets of replicas, and they phase all over the place and make lots more. So there would be, there's size is determined, I think, by the by what accretes around and through the seed cells that would be the replicas of the matrodons that are in the density levels. So suns have matrodons and their replicas. Their replicas are the radon cells, which are the zendradon, the etrodon, the ketrodon, and the natrodon, and the letrodon, which is the D13.5 big one that all the others are inside of. So there's this whole system that we're just getting information on that has to do with the radon cells. The important thing about those is realizing they're part of the pillar of power that stores the energy from those radon lines that come in, those heliopath lines that bring the plasma waves in. So that's where you really get the eternal life charge. That's also where you can reset things like the Ruchete spiral if it gets out of whack, and that's precisely what we're going to be doing with ourselves. Next one, please. I want to get to the Ruchete tonight before it gets too late. Are they going to forcefully remove us from the room at 12:30? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I do want to go into this, and I'm at least, if I don't get to go into detail on it, I'll at least want them to see what the Ruchete spiral is. All right, before we leave tonight. It's only going to be a short something they're going to have us do with the arcs. He was going to try something else, but whatever with the company, he's not going to do it because he's just not going to chance the field flux. Because whenever you start something up that hasn't been moving for a while, like even if we could tonight, I get a feeling because of the company that was hanging around that they're not going to have us do something that's going to create any kind of wobble in our fields, because that would give us a little vulnerability spot, just temporarily while the fields are kind of going, oh, what's that? And they just won't do that when there's things flying around that don't have particularly nice intentions, and that's part of it. But we couldn't do the full arc things anyway, but we can play with them. We can make them move, but we can't make them spark, is what he's saying. There's a certain thing that they do that the arcs themselves will spark when they move, but they won't spark until the until the zendradon is released. So we're going to begin to learn how to spark those, but that's going to be right before we leave. What I really want to get to, if I ever get through this series, I remember going through this series this morning, and I don't know how far away I am from them. How far away? Oh, we're all through those. Let me see. Yeah, I want to definitely make sure. I could do these after the fact, as long as we get to the fact. Okay. Because they're like okay, but they're not as important as the other ones. I know. They're showing it from every direction. Yeah, the Chariot of Fire one has some interesting stuff on it, and that it's the next set, right? There should, yeah. Yeah, I want to see. Okay. Anyway, beginning. What's the next one after that? Because Pillar of Power. That one. Yes. Yeah. Well, I'll stick that up briefly. Yeah, I'll stick them up briefly. They give information on the ethos and stuff. Now, if we bring the concept of phasing light cells down to Earth a little bit and down to our personal anatomies, instead of being way up there getting lost among many monads and flames and things up in the Eka base shield, what it comes down to is you have your, here, look at it this way. If this is the PCM Cathara grid, be it your density 1 or your 4 density 1, be it your crystal body 1, that's the biggest one, or even your small density 1, it implies that there's an eros, and it implies that there's an ethos. Now, they actually are created in the cycling of the matrodon. The way the matrodon up in the Eka base shield cycles is it projects out at 45 degrees from itself its first two light cells. So one goes this way, one goes that way. That's how the parallel ends up with having our eros over here. Our eros gets projected. If this is where our let's say our ethradon is, the center flame in our azure, and it's not the only flame, it's not the full seed atom flame, but let's say it's a replica of the matrodon, but on a smaller level. It begins phasing by projecting out at 90 degrees from itself the polarity flames, the ethos and the eros. Now the particle one that runs, antiparticle one that runs this way, where its top would be over here, that's this guy, it does the same thing and ends up with one up here and one up here. It projects one, I believe, over this way and one up, where ours projects one down and one over that way. And that creates the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells. Now, these start to phase, and it generates another cell. There's actually another cell behind this that's in the parallel, and it does connect you here to the parallel self here on this side of the Eka. But when you take this up to the matrodon level in the Eka base shield, there would actually be another cell behind this that is in the parallel Eka. It's like an open door between the two places, between the two stations of creation that are linked right through the center of the cell, just like we're linked to our parallel selves, to the parallel universe, to parallel Earth. All right. Now, the phasing begins is this one moves down and this one moves up. But they don't all happen at once. There's a process of where the ethos comes up and down and up and down. It does it 6 times. Now, your breathing cycle might be much shorter than the planet's breathing cycle. It might take, the cycle. And I haven't broken the cycles down into now. How long is a simple 6-breath cycle in planetary terms? There is a level of this that plugs into that and gets into the time waves and that kind of thing. And our own breathing rhythms are actually a smaller reflection of it. But I don't know, they haven't given me the linking on how to put the time waves into it yet, just to know that it's there and eventually that training is coming. But the phasing of the light cells is the process of the ethos coming up, and it's the ethos runs upside down. So it's one Cathara center is here, and it has its, if you look at it this way, you look at it right side up, it has its 12, and these would actually be reversed if it was right side up, but the 3, 6, and 9 are still on the same side as the PCM 3, 6, and 9 when you're looking at it upside down. This gets absolutely wacky when you put Merkabas into it. Now, each Cathara grid implies a Merkaba, even if you're dealing with huge light cells or tiny little atom light cells, and the ethos grid is upside down. So it actually has the top clockwise, and a bottom counterclockwise. But that makes it look like the top is magnetic and counterclockwise because its number 1 is up here, and that's its bottom. It gets even wackier when you'll see this on, I think it's the next diagram, when you have each of them doing something similar where they're kind of like meeting bottoms to the middle kind of thing. So what is spinning in what direction? Fortunately, we don't have to track it by the Merkaba. All right, there is a sheet that broke that down. I remember doing that one too and thinking, I think I'm going insane with detail. It really is beginning to drive me over the edge. But we'd had charts from the dance for programs when we got into Merkabas and the gender polarities of the smaller Merkabas inside the density ones. And they were the key to understanding, really, the proportions of male or frequency or magnetic frequency compared to female frequency in the ethos and the eros. So there is sheets following this in your chart packs that show a little bit of that. We've learned an awful lot in the last 2 months with this stuff. Just a huge amount of stuff. It's been like duck. It was one of those, can I hide under the table, and just pick it up off the floor once a year because it's coming in. It's hot and hard, a lot of stuff here. But the pillar of power. This is where we get where they started teaching us about the pillar of power. And what's interesting is it forms. Now these I've showed them separate. They don't go that far apart. The catharogrids the ethos will pull up only to where it's 12 and our 12 are at the same spot. And with the ethos, only until the ones and ones meet. It doesn't break off and go flying someplace else. It's just, they stay together. And that's just to show you the separate, when you first start to get used to pillar of power. So you can see that they're separate catharogrids. And they have specific numberings, Waither numberings, and specific places where their tops and bottoms are, which becomes important, too, as far as Merkaba spins and what's plugging into what. I really wonder where they're going to go with teaching us all this at some point. If it gets any harder, I think I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit putting it on. Not quit talking to you. I'll be glad to talk to you forever with anything they can get across to me. But when it comes to putting stuff on paper, and these diagrams aren't getting any easier, they're getting more sophisticated every time we do a set of them. And it's getting to be where I just lock myself in a temple for 6 months at a time just to get something done because it's relentless. But I don't foresee quitting anytime soon because I think they've given us enough here to last a while. But this is another way to look at the same thing, the pillar of power. It's not showing the crossbar. That would be the pillar of power for the parallel side of our vector, right? All right, so it's actually running through. So you have this pillar phasing this way, and behind that, these points sticking out here, they are the pKa top and bottom of their density grid, right? Just like this is our top and bottom of our density grid. And their pillar phases this way, where it phases to the center this way, and ours phases this way. It also means our rod phases, because our rod and their staff are in the same place. So there's this neat phasing that takes place between both. But it's easier to work with just your staff pillar, because that's where you're generating your power currents, is in the staff pillar, just like the parallel is in its staff. So it's easiest to begin learning about it through working with the vertical expansion and contraction. Now, this up here is just showing you where the lotus points fit on a Cathara grid and where they fit in relation to the pillar of power. When these positions were found, as far as where these levels of the pillar are, by taking the Cathara grid that had the embedded Cathara grid, say it was the density one, there was then the D3 one, and the D2 one, and the D1 one. The lotus points interface between the dimension levels of the pillar of power and the density levels. And they also interface directly between the etherics, which means the etherics have a set of these two. And when these come together, these sets open up with the etheric sets, and energy exchange takes place, direct energy exchange. So these are not where the lotus points don't manufacture the light or the light sparks or the life sparks in the pillar of power, but they directly transfer, they allow for the passage of the ethos and the PCM, the ethos and the eros, to interface with each other so those atomic currents can be generated. So there's a lot more to the lotus points than we know right now, that they control a lot more than they've gotten into with us. But for now, if we can understand that the lotus points interface that the 24 that we use interface directly with this inner pillar of power that is this phasing pillar, which the light cells of the ethos, the eros, and our density bodies are supposed to continually do every time we breathe. They should expand and contract and make sparks and eventually collect enough sparks where they can do their little shift to the side and combine with their actual twin and then go through Anataleya and Athanataleya states, pop off into the Lodi, and then come back again at a 45-degree spread. Anyway, that went a little fast on that. There's some diagrams that will show a little bit more of that. What am I doing on time? 25. Okay, still have some time. My back holds out. Okay. I'm not going to go heavy into these explanations. I'll just show you that they're there. You can read them as well as I can. Because what I want to do most is get us to the Rushite spiral. I want you to see what that is. We can cover some of the other stuff on Monday that's most important. And you can basically just read it if you want to see what's there, because I can read it to you. Some of it I can explain more of. But I want to, let's see, I'll do this one a little bit. Okay. Yeah. We don't actually need to do that. That's when I'm doing planetary stuff heavy, and I'll say planetary. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna jump over that and come back to that when I do the planetary, the bigger planetary stuff when we do Saturday. Yeah, because that goes just as easily with the planetary magnetic fields as it does personal. Yeah. Anyway, for this one, this is what I was talking about when I was showing you how the eros and ethos have their, because they're upside down basically. This is the bottom, and that's the top of the PCM male ethos. Now they call the males the moda, and the females the adhure. They're trying to get us used to using those words like in a bit broader term, and I just kind of cringe because I remember when they first brought that stuff through, I was like, oh no. This stuff makes no sense to me at all. I know it makes sense to you, but I don't get it. How am I supposed to teach it if I don't get it? We have this conversation sometimes, and they usually give me another dispensation that wipes me out for a week or two, and then eventually we wrangle it down to the ground and we get it in paper and say, oh, okay, that seems to make sense. This is one of those that's still in the stages of, yes, okay, we can identify the parts. I still haven't identified why I want to know this, or why I need to know this, or why we need to teach it, but it's here in case we ever do, and they obviously think there's a reason at some point we're going to need it because they gave it to us to make as a graph. This is just showing the three cells. This is the PCM ethos, eros, etheric. You have PCM and its ethos and eros. And over here you have the PKA, cathara grid, right, and its ethos and eros. When you put those two together, because remember the PKA and the PCM are actually in the same place, what you get is the matrodon cell. Right? So it's the same little thing. Yeah. So we've got our own version of it, and it is that phases. If you take the little circles away, what you have are phasing cathara grids. But those cathara grids carry light cells. They are light cells. They are radial bodies. All right? So you have the etheric male, the etheric female, and the PCM density one. Somewhere in there you also have the other, there's two others behind here that are the Ka that would go with the ethos and the Tha. But I'm not sure, that might be where the lodum crosses through. It might be like the next workshop's teachings, but I was just getting little pieces of it. But for now, this is what we have to work with, and when we begin to breathe consciously, we use this. The pillar of power has the width of the circle that would be around the cathara grid. It'd be how wide your pillar would be as the things are phasing up and down. They create the width of the Seor pillar. What's interesting is the cathara grids are actually spinning with the monad, which means they don't just sit there and lay flat. They spin like this on the monad. So you have this thing actually generating the pillar. The density one does it too. Now the density one going for the antiparticle goes this way. So these are actually spinning. That's where you're getting the pillar effect in the first place. But they're also spinning balls of light because there is a full radial body around there. When we work with just these, we can begin the process of, and again, every time you see a cathara grid, it does imply an arc set. So each of these has a lotus arc set, the 6-petal lotus arc set that goes with the Vecca system. it's really neat. There's a series of graphs I do want to show tonight, and we've got to get to, because it shows this neat thing that happens as the pillars phase, as the ethos rises, because this would be ethos rising, right? The arcs do specific things. And you can start to see how the arcs pull into the inner pillar, the inner part of the pillar, and the inner part of the pillar is where the sparks are manufactured. That's when you have the Iyumbi and the Azare and the Rajna flames sparking through each other and generating sparks. So there's a couple of neat diagrams that shows where the lotus plugs in, and it kind of illustrates it a little bit better. I think we're going to move to those if I can see. I don't know how close they are to these. I don't think so. Are they? No. Yeah, I can do that stuff next. I can do. Yeah, I'll do Huva. I'll do Huva body stuff if we need to. I'll put that in with the planetary stuff because I'm going to do a bit of planetary on. Okay, that's lotus points on the pillar. That's not what I'm looking for, though. No. I'm looking for one. No, not that either. It might be the next set behind. Yeah, because I want to go right into the stuff that takes us into the light phasing. Okay. This is the most important stuff. Ooh. What happened? Oh, almost had Mylars on the floor. Oh. They're such slippery little devils, aren't they? They fly all over the place. They slide. Let me see. No, past there. No, I'll deal with that stuff Saturday. Probably closer to the back. Where did it go? Here. These are what I'm looking for. Yeah. What was the one right before that? That gives out because I have maybe, we technically have till 12:30. I've got about till 12 left in me, to be honest with you, because my back is starting to do its thing again, which means frequencies are incoming again. It's been a very long 3 weeks, actually, because this last phase started. We didn't have sleep. We haven't seen the bedroom in about almost a month now, I think, because we take turns in the sitting room just to keep the other one company who's working in the kitchen or on the computer. So it's getting to me at this point. But I do want to get this most important stuff to you. The other things we'll cover some of when we have the rest of the workshop on Saturday morning. But the most important is I want to show you a bit about the phasing of the light cells of your body, of your own personal Matrodon replica that you could call your etheric body as a whole, because I would like you to understand the connection between the light cells and the movement of the arcs, because it's rather neat when you can see them. Now, this is just showing you that your light body, this is your light sound body. It's your Kathara body, your Kathara body, right? That's where the name Kathara comes from. You have your density body. In this light cell, you have your ethos grid here, or your Ka. They kind of combine the two, but I know they're two different light cells that interact with each other in a certain way. But first, you deal with the ethos, and your Eros is up here. That's the one you phase with, even though your ethos is actually over, your Eros is actually over here, but it's connected to the lodum. So you're phasing this way while your parallel is phasing this way. Now, next one, please. This is the stuff that was most important, because at the end of it we can get a clue as to what starburst might be. Whoop. Yeah, the guy in the middle. It's supposed to You've got your positive self and your negative self and yourself in the middle. This is your density self. This would be your Eros sound body imprint, and that's called your photonegative, and it's actually the opposite. It would have like the opposite of your positive image. It would be like the literal negative reflection of that. Your ethos is your positive. It's actually a photopositive image of your three-dimensional self. Your dimensionalized, your density self. Each one of your density levels has one. Each one of your dimensional levels has this part of yourself. And it's the phasing together that actually creates the unification of helons that build up to become atoms and molecules that become the body that you know. That template's actually held in 3 places. You have your inner male and your inner female, regardless of what gender you are. And whichever, now we got into Merkabas a bit before, as far as everybody has the same type of density, Merkaba, where it's the androgynous one, and in the PCM universe, it's 33 1/3 clockwise positive on top. But it's not Eros. It's pKa energy from the antiparticle side, and this is Laetore energy as opposed to Laedore etherics. There's also etheric Merkabas that goes with these, of course, as if there weren't enough to keep track of spins on already. Right? Why not have some more? So they each have a Merkaba set. The easiest way to deal with it is simply take it straight on as the pillar itself. As these draw up together, they form the pillar of power. At the center, very center of it, that's where the sparks generate when the ethos flames and eros flames cross through each other. But there's a very specific set of cycles. This is all plugged into what's called the genetic time codes. The genetic time codes are part of the base shield that everyone has, which is the Ruche shield. Now, we all have a set of Ruche vortices for each density level,